This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'm going to call the village board for Tuesday, August 27th to order, but before I do, I'd just like to mention that Joel Gregozeski, our village manager, will be the recording secretary tonight, as our village clerk is out today. So, roll call, please.
Trustee Service.
Here.
Trustee Paul.
Here.
Trustee Zerbal.
Here.
Trustee Atkinson is excused. Trustee Krieger.
Here.
And Trustee Flukie.
Here.
President Kardaski.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, action on the minutes of the open and closed session from July 23rd, 2024.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve those minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda. You must state your name and address. Limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody who would like to make any comments on items not on tonight's agenda? Anybody like to make comments on items not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we will move on. Number 7, written communications, announcements, and/or presentations. 7A, we have a presentation on NEW water update, draft budget, and rate increase.
All right, so I'll just kind of do a real quick introduction here. So tonight, we do have a presentation that New Water, so Green Bay Metro Sanitary District, is going to go through. It's just a very high-level overview of rate increases that we're going to see over the course of the next few years, multiple years. They did a presentation, it's my understanding, very similar to this back in early 2022. So it's just a recap. As you guys may be aware, currently we're kind of in a two-phase or two-step process of increasing our sanitary rates. So a 6.5% increase went into effect April 1st. A 3.5% increase will go into effect October 1st. However, that was to help to get our revenues in line with our expenses. With that being said, going into 2025, we are going to see additional increases for our our sanitary sewer treatment from New Water, and they, both Beth and Tom are up at the table, and they're going to go through the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom Sigmund, I'm Executive Director for New Water, and with me is Beth Clausen, who is our Director of Business Services. So we've got a short presentation. You can interrupt me anywhere along for questions or wait till the end, whichever is your preference. So have a very short agenda. Update on this facilities plan. I was here 2 years ago, and we talked about our liquids facilities plan, which we are in the process of implementing, and then talk a little bit about our 2025 budget, which we are in the process of putting together. So facilities plan, it's a comprehensive look at the liquids part as opposed to the solids in our system, which we completed most of that solids work in 2015. It's both at our Green Bay facility and our De Pere facility, and in 2021, when we had done the bulk of the work for the facilities plan before the public information, there were some main conclusions. It was most cost-effective and advantageous for us to keep the De Pere facility in operation. That was a issue that we looked at to see if it made sense, and it certainly did. It was too expensive to bring all of that treatment capacity up to our Green Bay facility and replicate it. We did find that we needed to invest a significant amount of money at both at our facilities as well as in our interceptor system, the big pipes that carry wastewater from communities such as Ashwaubenon to either of our two treatment plants. At the time, we were looking at about, and this is in 2021 dollars, around $310 million to about $470 million over the next 20 years. And that we projected would increase our revenue needs from our municipal customers about 5.5% to 7% each year for the next 10 years. And that's to fund both the capital as well as operation and maintenance. So that was the whole thing. And so this slide is one that we showed you a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. So what is driving the investment? There's two primary drivers. One is capacity, and that's our ability to have enough infrastructure to be able to treat the growth in this community or overall community as we go. And then replacement of assets. Many of the assets that we're replacing at our Green Bay and De Pere facility came online in 1975, so they are 50 years old today. Some of them will take another 10 years to get replaced. That's 60 years. It's a lot of life for some of our assets. When we do replace assets, we also look to optimize, try to see if we can get some efficiency both with energy and bring in some newer technology if we can when we're replacing technology. Regulatory at this time was not a big driver. The regulations, there's a lot of pending things out there, but they were out there far enough that that's not a driver of this plan. And then many of the projects we're doing or going to do involve both capacity and asset replacement. Next slide, please. So in that facility plan, I'd want to give you some updates on some projects. These are projects that we have either already bid and are started or are on design underway and will get to construction soon. So at our Green Bay facility, our north plant, we have a north and a south plant, and the clarifiers, we have 10 clarifiers that need to be rehabilitated at bid early part of this year. We're in construction. It's a $41 million capital project. Another one that was bid has not, the contractor, it bid about a month and a half ago. Contractor is doing the preliminary work, hasn't come on site, is our thickening improvements at our Green Bay facility, and that bid amount was, the whole capital cost, not just the bid amount, but all the engineering, is $27.5 million. So those are the two that we have hard bids on. Designs underway for our downtown interceptor project, the big pipes primarily in Green Bay and Alloway. In Alloway. Our De Pere facility, we have a pumping and headworks project that we are just about to go out to bid for later this year. And then our Green Bay facility, pumping and headworks, we started that project design just a couple of months ago, so it's early on in that. And then the East River lift station, big lift station and force main that takes wastewater from our southern service area up to the De Pere facility needs some additional capacity and replacement of equipment. So those are the ones that are already underway or near term for us. Next slide, please. I show this slide, it's showing the blue diamonds in the middle of the dark blue bars shows a CPI, Consumer Price Index, for any particular year and has changed. And then the dark blue or the light blue bars show from a national study that's done, updated every year, sewer service charges, so it would be for wastewater charges. And thing I wanted to show on this is that over the last 23 years, sewer service charges nationally have exceeded CPI. So CPI has not been a good indicator of sewer charge. And you can see in the light blue what's we as utilities are projecting for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So new water, is the conveyor of wastewater and we treat wastewater, produce water that goes back into the Fox River. We obviously have as customers, we have 15 municipal customers, Village of Ashwaubenon is one of them. And we have worked over the last few years to try to figure out what it might cost for a typical household for the services that we provide. So for our 2024 budget, we estimate a typical household will pay about $26 a month for new water services. And that's an increase of about $1.14 a month.
That includes sewer and water, so the people know.
No, that is just wastewater for new water.
Just wastewater.
Just wastewater for new water and not at the residential. So if typically a residential customer in the Village of Ashwaubenon would probably be paying $35 to $40 a month for their sewer bill. It could vary depending upon the community, but that $26, let's say it's 40, 26 of that comes from new water, and the rest would be for your cost for the Village of Ashwaubenon to build sewers, convey, and provide the services. At that point, it's an estimate for, but I would say it's an additional $10 to $15 a month for most of our communities. Next slide. So one of the things talked about in an earlier slide is when we looked at the facility plan and estimated we were going to need to increase revenues from our municipal customers 5.5% to 7% a year for the next 10 years. What we're showing here, the purple line is the uppers at 7%, and the blue line, horizontal line, is 5.5%. And you can see for 2022, 23, and 24 where we fit in that in terms of a increase in municipal revenues to cover the cost. And for our draft of 2025, it's the bullet. It's actually going to be a little closer to that blue line, but we've been, in general, in the range that we had projected for the last couple of years. Next slide. So with our draft 2025 budget, this is as of the July commission meeting, so that was a month ago. We have a commission meeting tomorrow. I do have a little bit of updated information, but our expenses, our municipal user fees, were up 6.2%. It's a little less than that now. Operation and maintenance expenses are up a little over 3%, and our capital, debt service and annual capital, were up 7.6%. It's a little less than that now. Total expenses were up 5.2%, so if you added operations and capital together. In terms of, some of the things are just what things cost, but also it's whether we treat more or less material from our customers, wastewater. So we've got a 2% increase in the budgeted volume amount over 2023, or 2024, budget, but there's been a slight decrease in wastewater strength, and that's typically driven by our industrial dischargers. We've got two of the larger paper, one's a recycler and one's a paper mill that are projected to reduce their loads, primarily through either production or they're doing pretreatment. At that time, we had said the Village of Ashwaubenon would be up about 6.9%. As the meeting we're going to have tomorrow, it's going to be, the number's going to be closer to 6%. We're continuing to refine that. And one of the things I'll talk about in the next slide is this does not include a capital charge true-up for 2024 that's going to be incurred in 2025. So you want to go, there you go. So beginning in 2024, and we had done work with our municipal customers primarily through the Public Works directors for quite a few years before that, had decided that we wanted to do a true-up of capital charges. So this was requested by our customers to achieve equity among the customers. If you used the system more, you paid a little bit more. If you use the system less than budget, you paid a little less. And this is only on capital. On the O&M side, what you discharge to us, we charge you the rate. It doesn't vary. But this was a reallocation of charges between customers. The net to new water is zero. This was, one customer said, I use the system more than another customer, then you'd be swapping costs. So the capital charge is billed in 2024 that we're billing each of you each month is based on budgeted unit allocation. So we sit down with our customers, including municipalities, typically in May and June of the year prior to the budget, and figure out what you think's going on in your community, and then we develop our budget. This capital charge true-up is based on the actual usage of the system. So in January of 2025, we will have all of 2024's information in. We'll go back, we'll look among all the customers, and it'll be a reallocation of that capital charge depending upon, did you have more flow, less flow than, it's not even in your budget, but it's based on your budget and what others are doing in the community. So what Public Works directors have asked us was at 6 months and then at 9 months to give them an estimate of, or standing of where they are so far in the year. We caution them quite a bit because we had looked at data in the past, and it is not necessarily a very good predictor of what the end of the year is going to look like. But it's a piece of information. You just got to be careful how you use it. So based on 6 months through 2024, across the 15 municipal customers, there is a range of, one customer is going to get a credit of 35% of their capital charge, and another customer on the other end is going to receive a charge that would be 37% more than their budgeted capital charge. Again, when you add those all together, it turns out to be zero for new water. So Ashwaubenon, through 6 months of this year, is going to be one that is going to have a charge to be paid. So based on 6 months, we're projected, and this is just for the 6 month, this is not projected to the end of the year, capital charge of 18% above the budget amount, or $210,000. I have a little asterisk below it. This is likely and probably almost certainly driven by industrial loadings, because much of that additional charge comes from the organic loading, which is BOD and suspended solids. Typically, residents don't give more. It's some of your industrial dischargers. So we've talked with Brian about that, and so that's where we are at the middle of the year, and we'll see where we are at the end of the year. We'll give him heads up through the end of September, and we'll see where it goes. But my guess is you are going to end up with a capital charge at the end of the year, unless some of your industrial dischargers were to significantly change how they are discharging to you. That is all I have for you today, and I will, Beth and I can try to answer any questions you might have.
Tom, with all the capital projects that you have coming up, is there any state or federal grants or anything available to help supplement some of the costs or help reduce those costs?
The answer is no. There are, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, significant, there was money put into the state revolving loan fund, which is the primary method that we get money from to borrow from the state of Wisconsin, their Clean Water Fund. 50% of that money that went in is to be pushed out in grants, but it is targeted to disadvantaged communities, and we do not qualify. So the money is going to come through low interest loans through the state of Wisconsin, as it always has.
You know, the graph you showed us of a straight line and then it continues to climp probably in the last couple of years and going up quite a bit. You know, through some of the low points here, how come some of the maintenance wasn't done when, you know, I know things wear out and whatever, but if you know something is gonna wear out within 10, 15 years, how come we didn't get that when the graft was down lower, rather than springing this on all the people that are paying this bill? You know, you're throwing some big expenses at all of our people in here of the village of Ashwaubenon are paying you. And now all of a sudden we get hit this hard with the increase for the next 20 years.
Well, I'll try to answer that. We do build our facilities to last. We do take good care of them. The maintenance has been done, has been kept up on all of that equipment. 50 years. So through 2015, we were spending significant amount of money working on replacing or upgrading our solids handling equipment. The liquids facilities had to wait. We could not do them all at the same time. We couldn't afford them. We didn't have just the ability to do it. So we've got 50 years out of this equipment, and it is time to replace it. I don't think it's been sprung on you. We knew that it was every year it was getting older. It was just a matter of how could we fit it in to a capital program to be able to get the work done. When all of the equipment in 1975 was built, and includes the De Pere facility as well as the Green Bay facility, we received a 77% grant from either the state or the federal government. It's Clean Water Loan, or the grant program. So we, as a community, paid 23 cents on the dollar for all of that equipment. We got it, we've used it, we've taken care of it. The unfortunate thing is today that all there is available to us are loans, and so we have to borrow all the money. They are subsidized low-interest loans, but we have to borrow the money, we have to pay it back. This is a program that we have worked to try to minimize the impact, but the equipment is worn out and it needs to be replaced. It couldn't have been replaced sooner, we just didn't have the capacity to get it done.
I remember you being here a couple of years ago, and I said I says, how come you don't allocate some money to pay these bills before they come at such an expense to our constituents?
It has been, well, I'll offer that it's not a practice in our industry to accrue money in advance and hold on to that money and then pay cash for it. That's not how this sector has done it. We have been able to accrue some reserves to be able to dampen some of the swings, but the normal process is that you borrow the money. The people that are using it over the next 20 years pay for it through the debt service payments over those 20 years, and that's been deemed to be the most equitable. But we do not, as a practice, and we are not alone, we do not accrue money and hold on to it to pay cash for things, other than we tend to do about $2 to $3 million a year in cash-funded capital programs, projects.
So if this is the case here with NEW, how does this compare to the other water treatment organizations across Wisconsin? Is this graph here a completely match to what they're seeing, or is this different than what Milwaukee's seeing, than what Manitowoc is seeing, than what Madison is seeing?
This is a national. This is not New Water. This is a compiled national graph that you're looking at here. It's entities providing information to a national organization. Madison has been on a 9% a year for the last 4 to 5 years and the foreseeable future to replace their capital. Milwaukee is doing the same. We're oftentimes on a slightly different schedule, depends upon when we put the capital in, how long it lasts, but we're all on a similar schedule.
Since it's all of the different water facilities, water treatment facilities across the state, what type of prioritization are you getting with the state legislature and that to try to help this? Because the fact that you just push it down on the constituents and the residents all the time, the residents are hurting from this. I have had people specifically come to me and say, wow, I got this gigantic increase. My pay's not going up. How am I supposed to be covering this just to be able to get water? And I think that's kind of a sad type of a situation. So I think there has to be some pushback given, because I can tell you our residents are hurting from them. I'm being told directly by them.
Our state legislature, the governor, have shown no inclination to send grant money to either clean water utilities or drinking water utilities, other than for specific things like lead line replacement.
And what type of organization do you have that you're actually going to them requesting this type of funding?
The state of Wisconsin has not put any money out for over 40 years.
Yeah, but are the different municipalities getting together to start to go to the state to do this? Because if you're all sitting out there individually, yeah, you absolutely aren't going to get nothing.
League of Wisconsin Municipalities is likely the group that talks with the state. The state believes their contribution is to subsidize the interest rate on the loans. We pay 55% of market for loans. So that is the state, that's the federal and the state's definition of their contribution to this by subsidizing a loan program. The grants are just not there.
So I just wrote myself a note. I sit on the board for the League of Municipalities, so I'm going to contact them tomorrow and see if there's any pushback we can give. But that being said, these are costs that we have no control over. But when you throw those numbers out of 35% and 37% and 18%, that does not mean that your water bill will be going up 35 and 18% and that type of stuff. Am I correct, Brian? I just don't want to put the public in a panic.
I'm sorry, the 35 and 18%?
Well, one of them was 18% is Ashwaubenon's going up, and
Oh, no, this is on your cap. This
I
is
know,
This is
I
the
know.
reallocation of capital.
I know, but I'm just saying
No, no,
that when they hear these numbers,
Right, so, one thing that I can touch on is, this is only not a small portion, this is the major portion of, the operational costs of our sanitary utility, but there are other costs that we do have control over. So, for instance, yes, we do pay a large portion of our utility is for the treatment costs, but then we do also have costs for us to clean, televise, labor costs, stuff like that. The increase on that side of our operations won't be at the similar percentage increase that you're hearing from New Water.
right?
And the 18%, the 35% that you're seeing, those are strictly capital charge true up. If we had to estimate that right now, it'd probably be about $400,000 at the end of 2024, which would be paid in 2025. That's assuming we go at the same rate that we're going at for the first 6 months of this year. It is likely that it could be a little bit less than that because there is generally a reduction in I&I, so it reduces your flow during the drier seasons of the year.
Okay.
If everyone gave us the budgeted amount of flows and loads that was budgeted for them, there would be no true-up. The reality is it rains differently in different parts of the community. Different industries might discharge more than they were projected to discharge. That's why you're seeing this difference.
Right, and it can be noted that We do have surcharge billing for those industrial users that do have heavy loading. So they do get a supplemental or additional bill on top of their normal sewer bill if they do have heavy loading. So say they aren't pre-treating as well as maybe they should be, or maybe not pre-treating at all. They may have a lot of solids in their waste. And that is all monitored monthly, and then they do get additional bills for that waste.
Right. Thank you for, I just wanted that explanation so that the residents don't all of a sudden think that their bills are gonna go up.
So,
It's high.
Tom, if I understand this correctly, to make it a little clearer to the residents, 5.5% to 7% increase for a residential bill is what we're looking at for the next 10 years. Is that correct?
In the total,
For just your portion of it, so,
for our portion of it and across all, so some municipalities have more flow and load, and so that would be, that's included in the 5.5% to 7%.
okay. So if it's $26 charge, as you said, an estimate for a typical household, it would be 5.5% to 7% more than that,
On,
potentially for the next 10 years, correct?
across the communities, yes.
Thank you.
Tom, you'd mentioned disadvantaged communities and relation and the word equity. What constitutes a disadvantaged community?
Oh, the state of Wisconsin has a very long formula that.
I'm sure it does.
It is, and I can't even tell you. Median household income tends to be one of the major components in it, and then employment, or unemployment. There's a number of different factors that they have in it. Median household income in the greater Green Bay area, is up around $56,000. And we just, when you compare that with some other communities in our state or in our state, we just can't compete for that. Our median household income is higher than some other communities that get them more points that would get more of the grant money.
But I'm just talking at just who you're servicing here. I'm not worried about, not as far as Madison or Milwaukee or outside this area. Do we have, as the state, as the state's formula goes, so we do have in your jurisdiction disadvantaged communities?
We have pockets. And we've had conversations with the Clean Water Fund. So as a metropolitan sewerage district, so all 15 communities, we just don't qualify at all. We looked at some we were actually able to talk with them about looking at zip codes to try to get specific neighborhoods if we had a specific project that served that neighborhood. We just haven't been able to put together the right project. But there aren't many of those neighborhoods in our service area that would qualify.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, number 8, action on consent agenda. A, receive, accept June 2024 financial reports. B, receive, accept June 2024 investment report. C, receive, accept June 2024 budgeted expenditures report. D, consider, discuss, act on temporary alcohol license extension for PMI for the Great Lakes Heavy Equipment Expo. E, consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer, Class B liquor license request for J&K Brothers LLC, DBA Mandarin Garden. F, consider, discuss, act on a permanent premise change for Oneida Casino, Maine, DBA Oneida Casino. And G, receive, accept August 2024 Public Works Department monthly report. Anybody?
Move to approve, there's no corrections or additions.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 9, public hearings. 9A, public hearing regarding ordinance number 08-1-24, regulating video boards within parts of the sports and entertainment and P public use zoning district. Are you going to take that?
I can take it. All right, village staff has prepared a draft ordinance. It's an amendment to chapter 17, subparagraph 3200, that provides definitions and 17-200 site plan review to provide for the regulation and permitting of video boards within parts of the SE sports entertainment and public use zoning districts. This ordinance was prepared based on requests from stadium area business owners to permit outdoor video boards for the purposes of providing live event viewing at their prospective or respective businesses, while also trying to balance the public goal of maintaining or minimizing distractions from drivers and vehicles in close proximity to those video boards. The ordinance was written, would permit video boards to be powered on and viewable from streets that are closed to vehicular traffic only. Video board installation requests would require discretionary review and action by the Site Plan Review Committee, Plan Commission, and Village Board. This ordinance was presented to the Site Plan Review Committee and Planning Commission. Both had voted 6-0 to recommend denial of that ordinance. As a result, this item was forwarded with that recommendation to Village Board, and in accordance to Village Ordinance, requires a public hearing, which is before you tonight.
Okay. This is a public hearing for the ordinance number 08-1-24, regulating video boards in the sports and entertainment district. Anybody would like to speak for or against this item? Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this item? Come on up. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Good evening. My name is Andy Szymanski with Anduzzi Sports Club, 1992 Home Green Way. I appreciate the opportunity to speak publicly about the use of video boards in the village of Ashwaubenon. As a company, we support the presence of video boards in the village for their positive impact to the entertainment experiences. I would first like to commend the Green Bay Packers for helping trailblaze this new form of entertainment in our community. They have utilized Titletown's video board to host an annual holiday show for several years. And most recently, the Packers announced their plans to show the first NFL game of the 2024 season on a large video board at Titletown for fans to enjoy an outdoor watch party while the team plays in Brazil. Similarly, we recognize and appreciate the fact the village of Ashwaubenon is supportive of video boards, made clearly through the use of the large screen at the Green Bay Rockers Stadium, Capital Credit Union Park, a property owned by the village of Ashwaubenon. All of these examples demonstrate highly visible screens that create community benefits through unique entertainment experiences. Even though the screens show live motion to roads open to vehicular traffic, there are no safety issues to date. There is a precedent for these initiatives safely generating positive experiences right here in Ashwaubenon. Anduzzi Sports Club has served the village of Ashwaubenon and its visitors for over 25 years. We have always worked to be a catalyst for positive improvement and evolution. 3 years ago, in 2021, we approached the village with a request to gain approval for a large TV that would allow fans to watch sporting events in our outdoor garden. This was a trend gaining steam throughout the country. After sharing various examples of their successful use in areas outside of Ashwaubenon, we continued to engage the discussion around approval for video boards the last several years. However, the message remained that our video board was too large in size and there were concerns around safety hazards. For 3 years, we have respected the decision of the village and waited for time and change to hopefully run its course. We come today, hopefully, that a new opportunity is beginning to take hold, as witnessed by what the Packers have done and what the village itself is doing. Our ask is merely that all local businesses be granted the same opportunities to develop and grow equally, all the while improving what Ashwaubenon has to offer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andy. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for or against this item? Anybody else who would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, I need a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, public hearing B, public hearing regarding the final resolution, number R 8-1-24, vacating Business Center Court.
I can take it. For the board's memory, CDA sold 3 parcels to Multi-Pond regarding the new development that's going to be proposed on its site. The Multi-Pond did enter into a development agreement with the village for that new center that's going to be out on Packer land. According to the development agreement and our negotiations with Multi-Pond, we were good to vacate the Business Center Court, that little cul-de-sac that's sitting out there. This is just part of a statutory procedure that we have to do to hold a public hearing and then to officially vacate it. So this is our last time go around. So we hold a public hearing and then they can have the cul-de-sac.
Okay. There's public hearing is open. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against this resolution? Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the resolution to close business or vacate Business Center Court? Anybody wanting to speak for or against vacating Business Center Court? Need a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, number 10, action items. 10A, consider, discuss, act on ordinance number 08-1-24, regulating video boards within parts of the SE Sports and Entertainment and P Public Use Zoning District. Okay. Discussion. Anybody have discussion?
How many times per year would it even apply? Like, how many times a year is Holmgren Way closed?
Well, typically on Holmgren Way, so what we have within the written ordinance, and this zoning map indicates where that sports and entertainment district is, so that's that kind of pale green color on there. Based on the draft ordinance that's presented to you tonight, it would be any businesses within that zoning district that have frontage along Armed Forces Drive, Holmgren Way, or Mike McCarthy Way. So typically during special events, you will see Armed Forces Drive closed probably more frequently than any of the other streets. There are times during training camps and other events at the Resch Center or the Resch Complex in which that street is closed. There's a variety of days throughout the calendar year, but certainly more than what you typically see for Packer home games. Holmgren Way may be closed at certain times for very specific special events. We do see that road closed at times for runs, marathons, things of that nature. So typically that's maybe a very few to a handful of times, 3 to let's say 5 times over the course of the year. In addition to that, there are portions of Holmgren Way that are closed during portions of the lead up and the actual game day experience that occurs at Lambeau Field. So let's say there's probably 10 to 15 times throughout the course of a year that street would be closed to vehicular traffic. The other street that's included in the mix as part of the ordinance is Mike McCarthy Way, and I don't believe we typically close that during Packer game day activity, but there may be times where we have certain run events that will use Mike McCarthy Way, and so there may be very short durations that road is closed. So in the grand scheme, those 3 streets with the with the exception of armed forces, are really closed only for maybe a handful or 2 times throughout the course of a year.
So I noticed that it was unanimously denied by 2 committees. What are the objections? I'm not on either of those committees. I'm just thinking if it's only gonna be 5 to 10 times a year and the road's closed, what are people objecting to?
The problem with the video board the way it is right now, and we've had this discussion with Andy, is that it sits perpendicular to the street. That's why it would only be on when the road is closed. One of the trustees at one of the committees brought up the fact that if there's say you have people out there watching a Packer playoff game and you have thousands of people watching it, and there's an emergency with an ambulance to go down there, it's gonna take a long time to clear that road out with the people. It will be closed for every Packer game, and like Joel said, it's probably 10 to 15 times a year. And that's only for those events. That's only Packer events. That's not the runs. And then there will be more. There will be more video boards going in. Now, what Andy brought up about the Packer, the big, large screen that they show those movies, videos on Lambeau, that's in Green Bay, so we have no regulation on that. The Rocker Stadium runs parallel to Holmgren Way. We discussed that. So it's not perpendicular to Holmgren Way, so that is a little bit different, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go
And
on,
what
Tom.
distinguishes this one a little bit more is that the Rocker Stadium, the main concern here is how close it is to the right-of-way. Rocker Stadium screen is back along the fence line. So this is what's different here is that it's a safety issue. And again, with the committee and the commission had discussion on safety issue about congregating outside of the video boards during and after the event itself, when maybe they're trying to reopen the street to try to get traffic or emergency vehicles going through. Now, again, that's probably the onus is on the owner of the video board itself or the licensed establishment to kind of help clear that out and assist. But that was one of the concerns, to answer your question, Kelly, about that was a safety issue. And the second one is about the saturation of the area, where the concern was if you approve one, where does it kind of stop? And there was a worry about having so many video boards along that corridor. But to kind of highlight that, and what we talked about at the commission, the committee, is that the ordinance doesn't necessarily say that Anduzzi's, for example, or anybody else can automatically have the video board. There is a video in the ordinance. There is a video board request that has to be approved per video board, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? Every establishment that wants to create the board or the large TV, for lack of a better term, has to make a request and go through site plan, the plan commission, and then the village board for approval. So it is within the discretion of the board to suggest that, well, we're too worried about it being oversaturated, or we're worried about the safety and the congregation of people before or after games in this particular area. So this area can get one, and this one cannot, based on this too many. So again, there's a lot of examples you can come up with something like that, but addressing some of the committee and the commission's concerns, that's what the staff put in to kind of help address that, where if there's a worry about an oversaturation of the video boards or the large TVs, it can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by the committee and the board.
The only problem I saw there, and the reason why I didn't like that, was once you give it to one, you can't not give it to somebody else. So that was part of the real reason why I felt about the denial. You know, it's a safety issue, number one. That was the overriding issue. Number two, if you do allow this, you've cracked the door. If you give it to one, you got to give it to everybody. You're not going to be able to really regulate and say, well, this one gets one, this one doesn't get one. That's not being fair. So I know at the committee level, that was the reasoning and the reasoning why the denial of it. This way, it just, nope, just can't do it.
My concerns about this area for many years has been the safety of this area for the users, from the motor vehicle drivers to the bicyclists to the pedestrians. From working with public safety several years ago to get LED lighting up there so it was more light, so it was safer for people moving through the area, to having Brown County look at a 3-lane configuration to slow vehicles down to make it safer by going with a 3-lane configuration. And putting in these video boards, it just is another distraction. Someone's driving and they're watching that last play, they want to catch it. At the same time, maybe someone's walking across the street. They're also watching that video recorder or the video to see what's going on with that last play. And we have an accident waiting to happen with those two. There's enough distractions and activity and things going on up there already. I just don't think this is the place for it. And like Mary said, it's way too close to the right of way, this particular one, to be safely on, because there's too many motor vehicles. And in the ordinance, it says it can only be on when the roads are closed, which, as Joel said, is very limited, but it can't be seen from any other road. If that's on and Armed Forces isn't closed, and let's say Holmgren's closed, but Armed Forces is not, you now have a road that's open that they have the video going, and you can see it very clearly from Armed Forces. So it's very difficult, I think, to say it's only a closed road, because there's other roads around there that would be open and you could certainly see it from.
Patrick, to simplify the ordinance, the way it's set right now, you can't use the video board, period, for
Correct.
safety reasons.
There's no permitted use of that.
There's no
correct.
permitted use. If the way the ordinance is written, you can use it if the road is closed.
You can use it if the road is closed.
If the road
Right.
is closed,
Upon approval by a village board.
correct.
So there still has to be an application and approval process for each video board. And if the board wants, and just kind of adding to that discussion a little bit, there's conditions that can be added to it. Where it's okay, this board in this area, we're gonna allow it to go on, but it has to be turned off by the very last play of the game, for example, or something like that. It can't be on something. So, again, but it allows full discretion to give conditions. And I'm, again, just hypothetically speaking, there's a lot of examples that can go into it. But the process would be that this would eventually permit individuals to apply to have a video board, and then the actual application itself would be reviewed by the committees and the board. If the board feels that it can be approved with conditions, it can do that. This ordinance is written to give discretion back to the board.
What if they would base the back of the board toward the road and fence the area in so people aren't walking into the road and only use it when it's closed? And I don't know, I'm just trying to think of ways to make it work.
Who's gonna enforce it, you guys? If you're saying they can only do it when the road is closed, is public safety gonna be out there checking that? There's a lot of other things I think that public safety has to do, and maybe it's a Wednesday night and there's a great basketball game on and Doozy says, hey, the road's not closed, we're gonna put this on, which I'm not saying you're going to, but I'm sure at some point someone will.
Isn't
Who's
it
gonna
an
be out there
outdoor-
enforcing it?
It's an outdoor venue, though. I mean, it's only, the most it could be open is half the year. You know what I mean?
Chief, is that road closed from, tell me how long that road's closed in front of the Sports Entertainment District?
2 hours before a game, 1 hour after the game is usually where it goes into closure. So, and to go back to your statement, I think, and Andy could probably answer this a little better, but he has the board in there and it's wired. He'd have to spend a lot of money to move that board the way it is, because we've talked about that in the past as well. So that would be a difficult financial hardship for him to move that, I believe. So he could answer that better than I could. But yeah, from a public safety standpoint, I agree with Tracy. It would be very hard for us if you put provisions in that say, oh, we can do it, to the last play or something like that. From a safety standpoint, if we want to have it when the road is closed, I feel confident that would be fine. If the road's closed, there's no vehicular traffic along there, people are coming about as they should, there's no concern in that point. But, his board is really close to the road. So if there's a live game going on, people are distracted enough with their phones, but they're certainly going to want to see what's going on that board depending on what the game is. So that's my concern from a public safety standpoint.
All right, during the road closure, is the street actually a wide sidewalk at that point?
Yeah, there's people.
People all over it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I understand the safety thing, and I agree with all of you on the safety thing. But if the street is closed and a video board is on, what is it hurting? You already heard how long the street is closed. 2 hours before and an hour after.
But Gary, what if you have other roads that are not closed that have a view of the board, not just necessarily this one, but let's say we have a whole bunch of them up there. how do you regulate that? Because they could be watching from a different road as they're not paying attention and watching that video board that's on a
Well, the
different
way
road.
the ordinance is written, you're not gonna have it on Lombardi or any other street. You know, you can't do it that way. The way it's sitting right now, it is permissible, the way we're talking right now, of the road closure. Certain streets you can't close. It's that simple. We know that.
Last meeting, we had a request for a alcohol extension for a parking lot. And I know it's gonna get extremely loud because of the surrounding areas. And I was told that we probably don't have enough officers if there's a complaint on that. So how are we gonna regulate this during a Packer game? So I'm just saying.
Yeah, the fear I have is you could actually have multiple games on. And now you have competing noise back and forth with multiple games. We've already got that challenge right now down there, to be dead honest, with bands. And that's not the ideal thing. And obviously, we haven't regulated anything there. So I think now adding video boards into it is just opening up something else to be just like the bands are.
Anytime you start something new, it opens it up. There is no doubt about it. And I don't care what it is. I'm not picking on this subject.
Correct.
I'm picking on
Absolutely correct.
anything.
There's a lot of valid points up here, not all of them. I think some of this stuff, we're digging a little too deep, looking for excuses not to do it. Andy has some valid points. I don't think all of them are necessarily valid. But in the end, for me, there's a reason we have these committees and commissions. They do a lot of their dirty work and more of the digging than we as a board up here do. And I think it's incumbent on us to put faith in those committees and commissions. And if something's gonna change on this, my opinion is, it should go back through the proper channels again and hash that out again and come back here before we approve it, anything.
I think this thing's been hashed out for a lot of years already.
Can I
Well,
ask
it
a
doesn't
que-
mean things can't change.
Well, I agree with you, but sometimes you gotta make a decision.
Yeah, but I'm not totally against doing this, but right now, like I said, me personally, I've got to put trust in the committees and the commissions and reasons they're recommending not to approve it. And Jay, I actually kind of like all the band stuff that goes on around there. I was in the area on Saturday night
I hear
with
ya.
my daughter and my wife, and I thought it was exciting.
Yeah. Yep,
Some people have a different opinion, but
yep. Don't disagree, Chris.
Can I ask a question? How the board ever got put up if it wasn't allowed? Because obviously it was not. So how did that occur? I don't remember if I was here or what happened that occurred.
Yeah, so the board went up as part of a site, it wasn't a component, it was not included as a component of a site plan that was ultimately approved to put that front patio there. So that's one of the main reasons why the video board has not been turned on, is it has not received any formal approval from the village, thus necessitating the need for us to review and consider this ordinance tonight. That's why it's been sitting idle for 2.5, 3 years now almost, I think.
Okay, thank you. I would make a motion to deny the ordinance 08124 regulating video boards.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny ordinance 08-1-24. More discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Opposed.
2 opposed. Thank you. Okay, 10B, consider discuss act on final resolution R 8-1-24, vacating business center court.
So again, this is kind of discussion what we had with the public hearing, that the business center court, the cul-de-sac needs to be formally vacated by resolution by the village board. This would be the last resolution that we would record it in the Brown County Register of Deeds. Once that happens, Joel's pulling it up in the the screen now. It's the cul-de-sac, and this will effectively go back to these 3 parcels you see surrounding it with multi-pond, where we've already closed on these 3 parcels, but effectively, the cul-de-sac would have been owned by them already, but since we're vacating the land, we just have to go through the procedures of doing it. And then after this resolution is finalized, vacating that property back to them, that'll get recorded, and then officially part of those 3 parcels. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we just recommend approving the ordinance, or excuse me, please.
Approve the ordinance as presented.
Resolution,
second
thank
it.
you.
Okay, that's a
Resolution.
motion to approve Resolution R 8-1-24, vacating Business Center Court. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Thank you. 10C, consider, discuss, act on a preliminary planned unit development PUD request for a multi-use senior residential development at 460 Marina Lane, parcel VA-132-13. Joel.
Thank you, Madam President. Lyons Construction and Design is the applicant representing for owner Baymar Holdings LLC, has requested a preliminary plan unit development review for a proposed multi-use residential development, including a memory care community-based residential facility, or CBRF, some townhomes, and senior living apartment building at 460 Marina Lane. This encompasses parcel VA 13213. It should be noted that this particular parcel has a closed environmental case on file with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Any work performed here has to be in conformance with the requirements of those DNR regulations. As this is a preliminary PUD request, detailed engineered plans, utilities, so on and so forth, would be forthcoming pending the approval of the preliminary PUD tonight, of which would then come back before the various committees and then ultimately culminating in a formal public hearing before the village board takes final adoption of an ordinance approving the final PUD. This particular subject property is currently vacant. It is zoned B3 community business. Adjacent land uses and zoning include the Residence Inn Hotel, which would be I guess sort of southwest corner of that is listed as B3. In addition to that, there is the OC Restaurant, which is also zoned B3 with a planned unit development overlay. And then the Riverway Marina, which also again is zoned B3 with a planned unit development overlay as well. There is an existing stormwater pond that services not only this parcel, but other parcels in the immediate development area. And then the Fox River is also to the east. The requested PUD overlay on the subject property would ultimately allow for the community-based residential facility along with the townhomes and adult senior apartment buildings within the B3 zoning district. There is a public trail easement that currently exists along the pond property on the east side of the project as well. In your packet was the overall development plan. I'll just kind of zoom through some pictures. This particular development includes this multi-story senior apartment building along with some townhome developments adjacent to that. And then these are the townhomes here. And then also the community-based residential facility. Driveway access to the development is to be from Marina Lane, south of Broadway. As South Broadway is a Brown County highway, driveway access permit from them would be required as part of a condition of improvement. As I mentioned again, the 6-unit attached townhomes and include about 30,760 square feet. In addition to that, there is a 44-unit community-based residential facility, and then the 5-story, 120-unit senior apartment building. In addition to that, there will be additional amenities proposed for the development, which includes a drive-in, covered first floor parking for the senior building, a pool, and grilling stations. Exterior materials right now have been identified for the CBRF, which will include a mixture of stone veneer, brick, vertical board, batten siding, and asphalt shingle roof. An exterior courtyard will face the north and will include a 7-foot-high aluminum fence for security purposes and to maintain residential participants in that area. Condensing units will also be located within the courtyard space, and any mechanical roof mount unit will be screened appropriately. The senior apartment building exterior materials will generally consist of horizontal metal wall panels on upper floors and concrete masonry CMUs on the first floor and accent upper floors. All apartment units on floors 2 through 5 will have walkout porches as indicated on the graphics. Under municipal code, all metal wall panels are to utilize fully concealed fasteners, which was identified in the staff report and as condition of approval. Again, this item went through the various committees as preliminary approval, and it did receive approval from both the Ashwaubenon Site Plan Review Committee and Planning Commission unanimously with staff conditions at their meeting on August 7th. As mentioned, as a preliminary PUD approval, tonight's approval essentially gives them the opportunity to finalize any detailed plans, drawings, so on and so forth, for resubmittal to the village for final PUD approval. So with that, there are members of the development team in the audience that I'm sure would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I will answer as best as I can.
Joel, can I ask a quick question before? So preliminary approval means that things can still change as it goes through the process, correct?
Yeah, I think what you'll see with a preliminary approval is the basic concepts, the conceptual level of the plan will stay consistent. So a plan for 3 distinct buildings, townhomes, the CBRF, the multi-story apartment building, those should stay relatively consistent. I don't think what you're going to see is a major change or swap out. But some of the finer details, maybe the architectural renderings, things like that, maybe some minor changes to parking configurations, access points, things of that nature can be certainly subject to change. So anything immaterial, if you will, could be subject to change as finer points come to light.
Okay, thank you.
This became, like Joel said, it came in front of the site plan and plan committee. A great project. That grounds have been there since God made it. I don't remember nothing being on that property. If there's no other questions, I'm move ahead to get the preliminary plan unit development on its way.
And I'll second that.
Can I ask one other question of, maybe Gary can answer it? I've never seen the term batten siding before. What actually is that, or what does that look like? Is that something different or new? Or maybe the developers could address that.
Gary, she's asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gary.
I wasn't paying attention.
I know you weren't. Jeez, come on.
So I think they'll answer it by shaking their head, but I believe the batten siding is the vertical siding versus the horizontal.
Could you come up and we'll need to have you state your name and address for the record, just.
Jamie Sprittles, 1919 Hillcrest Drive. Board and batten has been around for many years. It used to be wood product that they were on the 80s houses vertically. It's now non-maintenance product that looks the same but functions as a maintenance-free.
So it holds up a little better than your traditional siding?
Yes.
And what is it actually made of then?
There's a few different products. Some are vinyl and some are a wood product that's painted, that's warranted for 50 years.
Okay. Thank you. I just never heard the term before, so.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary PUD, and I am assuming, Gary, with staff
With staff
condition.
conditions, correct.
Okay, and the second was with staff
Agreed.
conditions? Okay.
One other
Tracy?
question, one other thing I'd just like to put forth is, this is a great project, like Gary said. I think it's a nice place for seniors, but what we need to remember is seniors are our most vulnerable population, and when we're looking at this, we have to make sure that they can move through this area safely and get out to Broadway to the sidewalk safely and get to the trail system safely. So please keep that in mind as this is going through, because we want to make sure that they can get out and get about and take advantage of, the area around them and make it easy for them to do that.
My only comment I have to make, about 15 years ago, there was a proposal for a project like this down on the river. And it kind of blew me away at that time that you put people with memory care issues by water. I understand it's relaxing and a lot of people do it, but I don't know, I think that's, I just thought it was different 15 years ago, and I went and toured one down in, I believe it was Nina. It was a beautiful facility, and it's relaxing and everything, but yeah, that always kind of struck me funny that we put seniors by the water with memory issues. But anyway, so we have a motion and a second to approve it because it is a nice project. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, 10D, consider, discuss, act on Second Amendment to the lease agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Cornerstone Community Center, Inc.
Okay,
Max.
I'll kind of set the stage, and then we have several representatives from Cornerstone here this evening that can answer any specific questions that you may have. So it's obviously out there that Cornerstone is looking to put a fourth sheet of ice at the Ashwaubenon Sports Complex. The Ashwaubenon Sports Complex, pretty good sized park in our park system. The fourth sheet of ice, the footprint that they're looking at would be from their current building, I believe it's sheet number 1, due south into some grass area as well as the current tennis court area. What Don Schulson and I, Don's manages Cornerstone, has managed it since its inception in 2000. What we've done, as well as administration, has kind of gone over the lease agreement. We've tweaked a few things in the lease agreement, including some payment back for the land that is being proposed for that fourth sheet of ice. The information is in here. I'll just quick do the highlights. Again, much of this property was bought and developed with park development funds. So what we're going to be doing, Cornerstone will be paying the village a $400,000, I guess, movement fee per se for the tennis court area, which can be used at our discretion, whether we do pickleball courts, whether we do more tennis courts, whether we do improvements to the current tennis courts that we have at Pioneer to make it usable longer into the evening for the high school to be able to stack their teams and their practices up. Still to be determined on our end, but we're looking at a $400,000 payment to be able to do that. In addition to the movement of the court, you have the land value. So now that land, which was, paid for from park development, would need to be made whole again. So we're looking at an additional payment on that as well. That would be $160,000 for that parcel that it's on. I should also say with that $400,000 for the tennis court relocation, one of the biggest things that we talked about it at a park board level. I've talked to the high school and the tennis coaches about it as well. One of the easier things to do to make this whole right of way is to light the Pioneer tennis courts. So what Cornerstone would be doing of that $400,000, they'd be doing $100,000 up front this fall still. And that should cover the majority, if not all, of the courts, at least to light Pioneer. It would be additional poles that would need to be put in, would need to be LED lighting that's directionally angled downwards so as not to spill out into the neighborhood. So a couple things going on there, but we're looking at that. One of the other things in the lease agreement that you have in front of you is the parking lot lighting payments. So their new lot, which is proposed, would be any asphalt maintenance and lighting of that lot would be on the Cornerstone to do. The village would still be plowing it in the wintertime as we do all of the lots at the Cornerstone / Ashwaubenon Sports Complex area. One of the additional changes, though, that we do have is the original parking lots, north and south lot, which were built originally in 2000. Right now, we are paying for all of the lighting costs on that. So now that lighting cost from the original parking lot would be split between Cornerstone and the village of Ashwaubenon. So we've got a couple of things here. The main thing that we're looking to do is approval of the lease. Approval of the lease would allow them to move forward with the construction of the fourth sheet of ice. I guess what I will do is I'll stop talking and then open it up to any questions. I will say that this was discussed at Park Board. It passed with a 4-1 vote to be brought to Village Board this evening. And as I said, Don is here tonight as well as one of the Cornerstone board members to try and answer any questions you may have.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I think at Tracy, if I'm right, at the park board, the no vote, I think was because of concern, of having to stack the schedules and a feeling students would be up a little bit later at night, but I think that was the only fairly major concern. But Rex had addressed that, I think, pretty well with the coaches and whoever is involved. And
I can also add a comment there, Chris. I talked to Nick Singer today directly and asked him that question, and he didn't feel it was going to be a problem to stack them.
Is he the athletic director?
Correct. Okay. Yeah, so he felt very confident that would be fine, that would be sufficient for him. The other comment that he did make is when we do move forward to building additional courts, which you have mentioned in here, which at this point I get, we don't really have a place where we'd probably build additional courts right now, is instead of putting one court in one place, one court in another place, to group of courts helps the area tennis programs, pickleball programs, whatever it might be, to have a group of tennis courts or whatever, because that way you can do matches and groups and that instead of doing one here, one there. That was his only other comment that he made.
Sure, and I understand the school district.
Yep.
What they're looking for. I would be cautious with that. I mean, we have partnered with the school district before on the soccer fields, which we've put a fair amount of money in out at the sports complex, which now they no longer use. We put a fair amount of money when I first started into the Cormier field. I'm just saying the way it is. We're into the Cormier ball diamond, which is used by AYB for their T-ball program. We put some new fencing out there. We put new dirt out there. We did a few things, and then all of a sudden that was reclaimed by the school district. So while we have a great partnership, I would just be cautious, moving forward with what the school district is looking for, because there's no guarantee that that's going to, I guess, last into perpetuity. One of the things that throws a little bit of I don't want to say a wrench in it, but one of the things that was discussed, to move the 7 courts, say we wanted to build another block of 7 courts elsewhere, there's really no spot to do it.
Right.
A good spot. You'd literally need to take virgin property, maybe not even park property at this time, to build these courts, to build a block of 7. We talked about doing it.
Could you put them where that unused soccer field is?
All of our soccer fields are used. What soccer field are we talking about?
Oh, is it used by other people but not the school? The one you just missed?
Yeah, we rent out, Ashwaubenon Youth Soccer uses both fields at the sports complex all summer long.
Oh, okay.
Those are full-sized adult fields, and then we also rent it out to FC Green Bay and Synergy. So literally every night of the week, that field is still being used.
Okay.
Certainly during the summertime and then into the fall as well. To move those 7 courts, we did look at the piece of property between immediately to the north of the sports complex. You've got a housing development, then you've got a sliver of cornfield per se, and then you've got Waterford Heights. So literally where West Main Avenue dead ends to the west before it turns into Layden, and you can kind of see the cricket field through that cornfield a little bit too. But that cornfield will hold tennis courts, but you'd have to have additional parking. You'd have to run electrical, sidewalks, bus turnaround. We're talking over $900,000. Over $900,000 is the initial estimate for pretty much a bare bones ADA accessible facility. And that's without any buildings. Now, there was some concern, well, shouldn't the Cornerstone be paying $900,000? Well, I don't think that was put aside because of the state of the current courts.
Correct.
The state of the current.
Good shape.
They're not in good shape. They're in horrible shape. They're 25 years old. We've patched them at minimum. I want to say I've done it at least 3, if not 4 times, at a fair amount of money each time. They really can't be cracked anymore because of the land movement. They're patched anymore. They would literally have to be totally blown up and redone again. That in and of itself would probably cost $400,000+. So really, you take the cost of a brand-new set of courts somewhere else, you have the cost of what it would cost to redo ours, and you're pretty much right at what we're asking for with the $400,000.
Yeah, Nick's comment wasn't that full-blown. He was just saying, look, if you're gonna start building new ones, don't put one here, don't put one there. And he knew fair well that there was no good place to put them. His main comment was Lighting Pioneer handled what he wanted, what he would need to run programs. So he was happy with that.
Talking to the tennis courts, we talked about maybe using some additional money for shade structures, for seating, benches, for spectator viewing, because right now at the Pioneer Courts, there's no place for spectators to sit per se. So there's some different options available for use of the money that would enhance the tennis program, especially if we lit those courts, and anything that would be left over, we can certainly look at. I know we've talked about historically having a future park out in the Highland Ridge area as that area continues to develop. Potentially putting some, whether it be a couple of tennis courts or pickleball courts, which have been asked for on that part of the village, maybe building some pickleball courts out in that neck of the woods. So there's certainly some different options that can be used with that funding that would be gathered. The funding would not, as I said, it would be $100,000 up front, and then the remaining of the funding, the $160,000 and the remaining $300,000 would be done over a 20-year period. That way, Cornerstone would be able to build that into their budget without any financial stress on them.
You know, the relationship with the ICE Center has been just a positive one for the village for many years from day one. Don, like you said, has been there since day one, and he's a great manager, done a really good job with that facility. And the board has been really good to work with. And hopefully it'll be there for the next 20 years and keep adding on. So I think the agreement is fair for all, and it'll help them to be successful and continue on. And sure, it will impact the park a little bit, but with the addition of more park line elsewhere, we can compensate and take care of that area as well.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the amended lease agreement.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the second amendment to the lease agreement between the village and Cornerstone Community Center. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10E, consider, discuss, act on special event application for the Bellin Women's Half Marathon Road closure.
Move to approve. Second.
Good.
Thank you.
Motion and a
You're making my
second to
job
approve
easier.
that?
Thank you.
Was the second?
Me.
Thank you.
Motion and a second to approve that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10F, consider, discuss, act on appeal of denied operator's license, G.W. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor applied for an operator's license and was denied according to our policy. The applicant did apply to an appeal for the operator's license at committee level and failed to show up. The operator appeal was denied. I'm not sure if Mr. Taylor
I
was.
don't see him in the audience, so I move to deny him again.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny the operator license for G.W. Taylor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10G, consider, discuss, act on a producer full-service retail sales application from Timekeeper Distillery.
Okay, so I'll try to break this up a little bit with the recent alcohol law change. I think my cover letter or my cover page on this application, if there's some questions on it, might be a little confusing, but in the meantime, just interrupt me if there's any questions on it. So with the recent law change to the Wisconsin alcohol statutes, it does permit wineries, breweries, distilleries from what I consider to be like a secondary and off-premise location. So it can be permanent or temporary. So based on the amount of barrels you brew or anything like that, that will give you permission, or excuse me, make you eligible to have so many off-premise locations, right? So if you're a brewery, so let's use a recent one that I saw in Sheboygan, Three Sheeps Brewery, something that kind of we're familiar with. they have a brewery and they brew beer, Three Sheeps, right? They are eligible to apply for an off-premise or secondary location, not necessarily to brew, but to sell and consume, right? So our main headquarters are in Sheboygan or any kind of city, but we want to be located in Green Bay, Wisconsin, for example. So these new alcohol laws allow that to happen, depending on if it's municipal approval first. The municipal approval has to give the thumbs up or say yes, and then that application we transfer to the DOR. The DOR will not consider the application unless it's first approved by the municipality. There is still a chance that the applicant could be denied by the DOR, even if there is approval from the municipality. So even if this one, for example, Ashwaubenon says yes, the DOR could potentially still say no. So it doesn't matter. But the point, going back, they won't even necessarily look at it unless there's municipal approval. What is advised is that these distilleries, breweries, or wineries, the same standards apply as you would your normal alcohol licensees for their applications, or applications for their license. That makes sense. So a Class B liquor license is supposed to be treated the same as this secondary location premise, right? So if someone comes in and I want to sell liquor, beer, wine at this location, the board should take the same considerations that it does for these off-premise the off-premise applications. Held the same standards. So that's what's advised. So according to our ordinances, if that makes sense. So treat them the same. In this one in particular, Timekeeper Distillery operates in Wausau. They want their secondary location to be here across the street at the Revolutionary Market. The issue here is that what's a little bit unique about this concept is that in that market there is I believe it's called the Super Day, that business, that restaurant operates kind of across the hall, if you will, in this open market concept. It is in the application packet of where the kind of Super Day and the bar is going to take place. Timekeeper Distillery is requesting to have permission from the village to operate within the entire, area. So that premise description would be shared with Super Day. But according to the application, the Super Day will not be operating at the same time. The hours will be different than the distillery. So one closes, one opens. If that makes sense. Believe that there might be some overlap during maybe special events, the draft, Packer games, things like that. The distillery is also requesting permission to extend that premise to the exterior in the parking lot. That's not too much of a concern from staff perspective. The board has a precedent of setting that according if there's some boundaries being made or if there's permission from the adjoining businesses or the owner of the property itself. Looks like there is permission from that. So the premise permission could extend into the parking lot. So with this one's a little unique in the sense of you're reviewing a request for permitted distillery. So there's no Class B license, right? There's no license at all. So Timekeeper Distillery can sell and consume what they're producing in Wausau, right? So it's just the spirits. So bourbon, et cetera, and I think they can explain a little bit more what they actually sell. And I think there's maybe some food items too, maybe a menu that they want to sell. And I won't get into that, I'll let them explain. But basically that's the basic comment, or the basic concept, is that the board reviews this distillery, this permitted place in Wausau, from coming here into Ashwaubenon and seeing if they can be granted permission from operating.
So Patrick, let me check. So if we gave them permission tonight,
Yes,
then the state DOR would have to approve them as well.
yes.
So then, do we have any say then over like the outside space and the controls for that and like the health department for the food they're gonna serve? So of all that still we have control over, or is the state taking that away as well?
Our local ordinances would still apply to these off-premise sites, so we could still have say and input as to where their premise description could be. Enforcing their operators' licenses, enforcing the times that they can sell. So the local, it's the same as like a brewery or a winery distillery. We can't grant the permission in the sense of like they can be permitted. This one's a little bit different. But we can still enforce our own ordinances.
So Patrick, years ago, there's another business within this area. So we would be giving the okay to license the entire area.
If the board wants to grant permission for the entire area, it can. It can limit the premise itself, where you can and can't consume or sell. But yeah, the application right now is for the entire premise. It can be restricted.
So they have a second business in there, which I think is not a conflicting business at all. But if that business were to go out and something else would come in that is, I'm gonna say, a conflicted business, we have no control over that.
Well, according to this, well, correct. There's no control necessarily of the board of what business goes in. So the Super Day, technically, what I'm hearing, Mary, is that if Super Day decides to leave, could a different business go in, take Super Day's spot in that, as a tenant in that area? Yes, it could.
Yes.
Think of anything outside of a non-food selling place, right?
Right.
Hair salon, for example, or something like that. So yeah, it technically could. And the board, I wouldn't recommend, I don't think it would be allowed to restrict the premise of where they can sell and consume based on a new business going in.
We cannot.
I don't think they can reduce the premises based on that. So, and the reason is because now Timekeeper Distillery can be there legally, regardless of what that business is.
Right.
So it's essentially, yeah, legally speaking, according to statutes, they can be there, right, regardless of what the business is across the way, the Super Day. However, the board has kind of taken this policy where the board doesn't approve standalone taverns without something attached to it. So think of someone coming in for a Class B liquor license, the board has consistently said, well, you need to have a restaurant, or you need to be a grocery store, or a movie theater, bowling alley, whatever, something along those lines of what we see in the state statutes. That ordinance wasn't passed, if the board recalls, because they wanted to see each application that comes in, which is kind of what this is. So effectively, this is kind of approving like a Class B liquor license, right? But it's a permitted operation from the state. Now, it's a little unique in this sense is that there's a restaurant literally across the hall from it, and they're going to have additional food items as well. I'm not sure what the menu is, but I can speak on that. So, yeah, that's what it is. They can be there now, but if a new business comes in, we'd have no control of controlling of what can go in,
Right.
and reducing their hours or reducing the premises based on a new potential business.
So a couple of years ago, when this it's different, little bit different, wine license, liquor license, whatever, they had to have 4 walls. I remember that distinctly. They had to have 4 walls. This will not have 4 walls to contain the distilled spirits, correct?
That was the question on that subject back then. They had nowhere to store the liquor, and they had, it was open to the public, and that's why we denied it.
And our ordinances do suggest that all liquor, wine, beer, whatever has to be closed and locked at the end of them selling. And so according to their packet, I do believe that is mentioned, and it's going to be locked in cages or something along those lines.
But it's not in this diagram.
I'm not sure if it's in the diagram, but it is, and that's certainly something if the board has concerns on, if they want to see something more from the applicant, they can absolutely address that. I believe in the packet, though, that they do address it being locked.
So what you're saying is they are bringing whatever liquor they produce, spirits, let's call it, they can bring here with no liquor license.
Correct.
Using their liquor license to come here.
Correct. Essentially, it's using their permit. So the board did approve one for Badger State. It was a temporary one, but let's say Badger State, they wanted to sell at this location, at this street, on this date. They can do that now because it's an off-premise area, but it's a brewery, so they're allowed to do that. So the board was a little apprehensive because it was just temporary. It was one day.
After, can we, I'd like to hear from them.
Absolutely.
Can we open the floor, please? I'd like to make a motion to open the floor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to open the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Kim Weber, 3824 North 14th Street, Wausau, Wisconsin.
Dan Weber, 3824 North 14th Street, Wausau, Wisconsin.
14th Street.
So I'd love to just thank everybody for the opportunity to be here and to come back to a community that I'm actually from. So Dan and I are very excited to be here. These alcohol modernization changes have been in effect, or well, in progress for a very long time, and they're very all-encompassing. With the first wave of changes taking place in May, and the rest of the changes will take place over the course of the next couple of years. So this was part of phase one rollout, but I just wanted to take a moment to introduce us. So I'm Kim Weber. I'm originally a West Appear Phantom. So I graduated, moved on, and we found ourselves in Wausau, Wisconsin, starting a distillery. Dan, my husband, is the head chef, head distiller, previously a head brewmaster for a different company. So he comes with a lot of industry experience, and I'm the president and director of operations for Timekeeper Distillery. We've been open to the public in our community for 6 years. We took over an abandoned train station. A lot of you probably are aware of the 1901 Wausau train station that was featured on Thursday Night Football in the face of Wausau Insurance. So we took over a vacant property that was blighted in our community, and through the use of community partnership and resources, we're able to restore that during our honeymoon. So that was a really wonderful experience. And during our time, in our 6 years of being business owners in Wausau, we've really tried to do something greater than being distillery owners. So Timekeeper Distillery is also the Wausau Historic Depot. It's a gathering place. It's a place where folks come for celebrations of life. We're a community hub, and we really pride ourselves in not just creating craft cocktails, which is obviously something we do, but also providing an experience, which has further enhanced the sense of place in Wausau. We're a hub for travelers from all over the Midwest due to the natural resources that our community offers, and our facility is actually rated in the top 5 on TripAdvisor, and we've been something that the Visitors Bureau utilizes to draw folks to our community. So something that we do, and our sense of purpose as business owners, is greater than just crafting great spirits and selling them over the counter, but also creating experiences. We do that through our culinary program. So if you had a chance to preview our packet as well as potentially check out our website, you'll see the small plate offerings that we do offer. But we also do different things such as trivia nights where we'll pair, themed trivia with themed cuisine. So if you're a Friends fan, you can get Chandler's grilled cheese and Thanksgiving tomato soup. We do lobster rolls on Fridays, smash burgers on Thursdays, and we also feature ethnic partners in our community to bring cuisine that isn't readily available to create that sense of belonging and community and draw folks to our facility that have never visited. So these law changes allow us a very unique opportunity to be able to hopefully join a community that we're already familiar with, and we're able to offer, hopefully an experience and fill a need or complement what's already happening in your community. The laws are very unique, they're very different. We're happy to answer any questions, but that's just a little bit about our business.
I'd like to hear kind of what's your business plan going forward, and don't take this next comment wrong. Many businesses that start like yours, very successful. You two are 100% in on it, everything. Now you're 100 miles away. Mm-hmm. You're living on 14th Street in Wausau, and now you got a facility here. Who's managing that? How's it going to keep up to the standards that you have? All of that. What's your business plan? Yep. What are your, great, you graduated from West Appear. That's not a positive, but okay. So it's quite all right.
No, and
But you understand what I'm saying is what's your plan? How are you going to make this work in Ashwaubenon going forward?
No, I think
why did you pick this location is my question, referring to Jay's.
So I'll answer. I'm going to kind of
go for it.
I'm going to kind of go like this, and then he'll interject because that's just what we do. So a mark of great leadership is being able to lead effectively no matter your proximity to your location. That being said, we plan to lead very closely. My family is still here. We have a young little one, and we do visit the area frequently. Our facility in Wausau runs efficiently. My husband's an engineer by trade before being a brewmaster, so everything we do is on standard operating procedures, and we have expectations, cameras. We plan to be cashless here. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do to be able to scale our business. To start, we wouldn't be open every day of the week. We'd see what does the community want and what are we able to effectively staff and manage ourselves.
Okay.
So we have heavy boots on the ground in our Wausau community to allow us to expand our personal resources here, to be able to really wrap our arms around this location.
And then we're, a big thing Hello?
It actually is.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good right there.
So one of the things where, you know, we've contemplated this ourselves, is really a reallocation of our priorities. I appreciate the compliment in my past. My wife was a general manager of Target in her previous life, and she managed 180 employees. And so management is certainly in her bones, and she keeps me in line. So, but really where we see this opportunity is a reprioritization of where my time is. And right now, we do distribute to about 200 or 300 accounts across the state. And we do manufacture. We have ample team members now in our production facility. And really where a lot of this came about, which will come to your question, is a reallocation of where my time is best spent. I'm spending an hour and a half on the road one way, several times a week, away from my family, trying to push sales, knocking on doors, you know, doing the boots on the ground. And, you know, when you're on the ground, you're away from your family, and let's say I do $1,000 in sales just for round numbers. Of that, my net take home is $200, and that's not including if I have to take a hotel, if I have to pay for food, you know. So we are an hour and 15 minutes doorstep to doorstep from our facility to here with ample family in the area to help with. We actually have more babysitters in the Green Bay area than we do in Wausau. And so my idea is, or my plan is to prioritize, you know, Green Bay, you know, Wednesday through Saturday, game day Sundays, where that time of mine would already be taken in sales, in distribution, and then having actually more opportunities to be around my family, being closer to her home, as I don't have much family in Wausau. Being 6 years in business at Timekeeper, we have everything there run to a watch. You know, it's on time, it's on place. We have a wildly good reputation in our community. We have a strong team. We are really excited about the partnership with Super Day. We really look to feature her food. Yes, we are known for cocktails, but our culinary program has really taken off in several years. Multiple reasons. One, it's an opportunity, and two, you have to. Quite frankly, people aren't drinking as much as they used to. The younger generations aren't. People aren't going out as late. And so we've been forced to pivot our own businesses and found success in our culinary program, creating experiences. I always say that I don't sell whiskey, we don't sell cocktails, we sell an experience. And it starts with the warm, friendly staff and the attention to detail that we pay with everything that we offer in our food and beverage program. I know that without our involvement, Super Day will candidly probably not be able to re-sign their lease. And so we feel that this is a really good strategic partnership for both of us. Being friends with her, being friends with the business owner, we know that we'll have eyes and ears on our facility at all times. We have in the packet isolated areas that are under lock and key at all times for our bulk inventory, as well as our used inventory and locked coolers. We hope to do a variety of, like we had talked about, experience nights with, trivia, or whether it be, we've done, one of my favorite things is to bring in chefs for pairings and things like that. So again, creating experiences for the community. And in a limited capacity, we're only going to be open from 5 to 10 p.m., 5 to 11 p.m. most nights, 4 to 5 days a week. Given the bandwidth that we pay that we're already executing and not being as profitable as we could be, it's just a reallocation of our time, not necessarily shortening the opportunities that we have.
And I was made aware of this location. I've been driving here to get my hair done since I went away to college, and I was made aware of the facility based on a partnership and friendship I have with the owner of the market. And with the recent law changes, it was one of those light bulb moments of, well, this could be what we've been looking for. Frankly, we've been looking to expand our business, as Dan said, and maybe shifting some of our key focuses, as I think a lot of businesses should, given the current landscape, and are. And frankly, to start your own brick and mortar, to invest in real estate or assume a 5-year lease or not have a strategic partnership, the future of business has changed in the last 5 years. And you have to be extremely resilient, adaptable. If somebody takes my class and they want to open a restaurant, I say start in a business incubator, start in a commercial kitchen, start catering, effectively scale your business. This is a really great way for us to scale our business and gain some presence in a community that we think will be very receptive to the products and experiences that we offer based on the overwhelming response we get from out-of-town travelers at our current facility.
Why don't you just change your business model and just consume Super Day and just sell their product?
That's kind of essentially where the relationship is, only keeping ourselves separate. So we'll be, two entities, and I wouldn't really even call it a market anymore. It's basically a soup and sandwich shop by day and Timekeeper lounge and distillery by night.
Yeah, but what difference does it matter?
Well, I mean,
So you can sell a beer at lunchtime. Do you care?
we don't, but
Well, then that's my point. Why don't you just put the two businesses together? To me, that makes a lot more sense.
And I can see where from a
Then the splitting, because I'll be honest, this creates a kind of something that we haven't permitted before, to have an open concept with multiple businesses and then serving alcohol. If this became in front of Public Works, I don't think we'd approve it, because we don't allow that. We need to have an enclosed area on that, where if you can combine the whole area, okay, now it's an enclosed area. You can serve Super Day's products. You can definitely serve their products, but you basically then have the whole premise. I obviously, you guys have looked at this and are much deeper into it than me, but I will say that presents a problem for me to approve you with this business that might be there, might not be there. You also made me a little nervous that they wouldn't be able to re-sign their lease. That means that business isn't doing that well. There's just some red flags that are coming up in front of me.
I have one question. You made a really nice little map. You can tell he's an engineer, right? So, where in this space would you store this?
So the gift shop area is actually completely lockable and closable. There's sliding doors that come into there. And then one of the things that wasn't brought up that I believe we had our attorney touch base with Mr. Legal just to make sure we're all on the same page, is one of the things that we were going to do is exempt Super Days Bar from, because you can permit inside of a facility, that we would exempt the serving bar from Super Day from not being able to store, serve, or consume alcohol at or around their bar. So you can see that in the diagram as well. Again, we're operating during different hours, so that there is no cross-contamination, there is no overflow. The challenges of combining businesses is, do we buy her out? We don't have the cash resources for that. Our business, she probably won't have the resources, and we have a board of directors, we're an S Corp. And so even though that we are the majority owners, it'd be very difficult to bring into another investor into that pool. And so we do know that these laws are a little different, but I think it really provides opportunity. And again, if there's no alcohol permitted in her area, as well as not operating during the same times, we'd hoped that would have been a nice compromise to make sure that, we're concerned about, public health and safety. We're concerned about making sure that our business assets are separated to the level that we can, and that everything is under lock and key.
I think the concern is that if Super Day isn't there, say it's going to be a dog grooming business, and it's in there with you, and that's probably more of a concern than.
I mean, we could certainly, come to so one of the unique things is, if our premise is over that unit, so we're one unit that's 2,000 square feet. We're not sharing a building with the bakery. We're not sharing a building with the hair salon. We're one isolated business. And so in that area, you can only have one permit. So if our permit is there on that position, you can't have a bar come in. You can't have a liquor store or anything like that. I would have no problems if we're able to build in a concession that any tenant that we would have in the future would be, permissible from the municipality. We'd be happy to write that exception. But I do think that Julie is a dedicated business owner. I think that we are going to be a very dynamic team to create a sense of synergy, cross-promotional, community-centric. It's in our best interest for her to be there to help us with our culinary program. We talked about the bandwidth, and so having somebody there that's regularly, that has the talents that she has, that has the clientele that she has, I think that she's doing fine. But I do think that, the carrying costs in this area can be a little heavy when you're only open serving, grab-and-go items for a few hours a day. And so by having us there, we'll be able to offer her alternative sources of income. We'll be able to get her additional exposure, as well as exposure for us, the people that are coming in, seeing the cool stuff around, like, I need to come back here. Or even for us, like, oh my God, this food was great. I got to come back here for lunch. Or maybe I need a caterer. And so, we think that, these collaborative opportunities are way more beneficial than a negative of, just how expensive it can be when you have a limited, business window of hours. Same thing with us. If we look to carry on another facility, and we're primarily sticking with our hours of 5 to 10 p.m., that's 19 hours a day that property isn't generating income. It's one of the issues that we came into with WASA, and so that's why we opened during the day as the WASA Historic Depot. And that's a private event facility specifically catered towards corporate services and corporate partners and memorial services, and really being able to utilize the space to its full potential. Yeah.
So the short time you're gonna run that, meaning hours per day, you're gonna open the bar, bring all the products out, run it for the 4 hours, whatever the hours are. And at the end of the day, you gotta put all that stuff under lock and key again,
Yes.
so that the next business can start in the morning, let's say. So you're gonna spend that much time setting up a bar and tearing it down every time.
Sir, this is where a lot of my programs have come into place. All of our bulk alcohol, or like gift shop alcohol, will be stored in that locked cage at all times. If we need something, we'll pull it from there. We only produce 4 spirits, so we really have to put away 4 bottles. So, and it just goes into a cooler right behind us. We're not a huge back bar with 100 different bottles. We're not, we're really dedicated to creating a craft experience with the products that we produce. So we make all of our elixirs, our simple syrups on site. We fresh squeeze all of our own lemons. You're not gonna find Captain and Cokes. Sorry if that offends anyone, but that's not really what we're here for. You can't get shots from us. You can't do bombs. We strictly prohibit those, even with our corporate partners. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Greenheck. They're like, hey, we want to do shots. We want to shake for shots. And it's really hard to tell a partner like that no, but that's not something that we do, and that's not the business that we are.
I think it sounds really interesting. I think it's a forward-thinking business. I like the event nights. It sounds like a place I would enjoy going. I understand all the objections to the open concept and the overlapping of the businesses, but I would be willing to give them the permit, and then let's work on those conditions and get it to the point where we agree. Like you said, you'd be willing to do an exception that there has to be a tenant that's approved by the municipality, and I think it could work. I think it could be a nice addition to the village.
Yeah, I think certainly the floor is open, so I'm sure we'll have further conversation, but a couple things that I want to just touch on. So one, this, and Patrick mentioned it before, the reason why this is coming before you is because there was a change in statutory law related to permitted distillers, producers, wholesalers. In the past, these types of requests had not come to the governing body of the municipality. So this AB 105 form is new. As a result, we do not currently manage through our own ordinance how we process these types of applications. And I think someone had mentioned tonight about maybe going through committee or what, this didn't go through committee. It's because our ordinance does not specify that it should. And so there's that component. There's a few items that I think we should be a little bit cautious of when it comes to granting permission on this type of license. So this is a permit that the state issues. They request basically consent from the governing body from the local municipality. So it still has to act, even though it's a permit issued by the state, still must act very similarly to a licensed premise. in the municipality. So all of the things that come with license regulations for alcohol sales, consumption, chapter 125, are still hold true, and our ordinances still hold true. So there's a couple things that I think we need to be cautious of. Is one, I don't know that we have the capability of setting conditions for hours of operations. I don't know that we necessarily have the ability to set conditions on the premise as far as when Super Day is open, when they're closed. It's the premise that's described as part of the application, and that's what's issued. And then I think we probably should take some caution to a section of the code. I think Mary referenced it as it related to that kind of four walls component. So there's a provision within the statute, so there's certain businesses that may be in conflict with a license or a permitted establishment, and in which they have to have some type of secondary doorway that serves that unique premise. So Super Day being a separate premise, and I think the argument is that Super Day is this kind of gray area. It's a restaurant, if you will, an eatery, which is a compatible additional business. However, it's operated by a different operator. The argument is that a dog groomer or someone else could come in. Now that is no longer a compatible business. We have no way of revoking or limiting the license then as a result of that. So I guess the caution would be, I would be cautious to grant permission right now, because I think there's a few questions that are a little unanswered. So my recommendation, and even though ordinance doesn't require this type of permit application to go to committee, is I would recommend the board refer this back to committee. Staff can then do our due diligence with the DOR and put together a more robust understanding of what this entails when you have this kind of joint premise, if you will, or the joint businesses being conducted under the same premise. And then this can come back through the board then after it's been deliberated at committee.
I think that's a good step forward, Joe, because I don't think a lot of us are in disagreement with what you're trying to do, but I think we need to understand a little more of how can we control the rules and that, because we additionally have to be fair to the other businesses that are in the area, and they have to fall underneath certain rules. Granted, you're a little different now. So how does that fit in the whole basket of all the different different retailers we have out there? So I will.
Jake, can I say one more thing before? You know, we've built a lot of complexes in this area. I just basically am going to say a half a dozen big complexes for housing purposes. Most of them have 1,400 square feet of vacant property for retail license. Do you want all of them filled with their type of product?
Yeah, that's a good question, right?
That would fit that mold pretty well.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah,
want to.
I guess appropriately, I would like to have this tabled and sent back to committee.
So let's,
Okay.
if
Super Day, if you guys
Okay.
would like to ask me questions at all, because I'm here.
Yeah, so,
The other place.
Okay.
yeah, just as a reference, before any action's taken, the floor is open. so
Correct, the
whatever-
floor is open, so if we want to hear from the Super Day lady, we can
We
have
can
her,
do
you
that.
can come and join in a
You
chair.
can do that.
Before she speaks, I was trying to interject a little bit here. I just want to get a chance. It's a very unique opportunity, and I think it's a pretty exciting opportunity. And I think you guys have thought this through very well. And your presentation is impressive. I heard a couple times up here about the type of business that's across the hall from those guys. I feel uncomfortable in this situation anyway, trying to dictate to them who should be across from them. If they're running, if we're comfortable that they have a legitimate business and it's well-run, well-maintained, they're following, it's not our business to tell them who should be across from them.
Yeah, I think the issue, Chris, is whether it's lawfully
Right.
able to be.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's the caution, is if we were to grant it now, because let's say Super Day is an eligible business under 132.
What changes in the law if it ends up being a dog groomer?
So
I
there's,
guess I'm confused with
there's
that.
certain businesses that are exempt from the restrictions that require a secondary exit and a primary entrance
Okay.
into the licensed premise. So as an example, a restaurant, grocery store with a tavern could be connected, novelty stores and taverns can be connected. And the way that paragraph reads, it talks about both licensed premises and permitted premises. So this would be a permitted premise. So what my suggestion is, let's get confirmation from the DOR that we are reading this code correctly. Because as of right now, maybe Super Day does fit, but in the event that a different operator comes in there as a secondary business, right, a dog groomer or whoever, that doesn't fit within the exemption of the code.
Okay.
And then what? What do we do then, right? So it's not an argument about whether or not this is a great idea. It's a matter of, are we fitting the lawful requirements of 125?
Okay, that's what I wanted to.
Right.
Would the
Okay.
incoming business to do business in your community need approval? And then so wouldn't they be exempt? They wouldn't be able to
No,
be moved in?
They wouldn't. A business doesn't need our approval to,
We wouldn't be able to put a condition on the future tenant in that location, where it's almost a condition on your approval process. You can't necessarily put a condition on a future prospective tenant. So in this situation, there's what Joel was talking about. There's certain businesses you can open attached to like a Class B liquor license, like a grocery store, for example.
Okay,
You
but
can't just
why
have
are we
any-
talking about Class B liquor license? Because these guys are a permitted business, not a licensed business.
It's a permitted premises. It's a
So
permitted
shouldn't we
premise
be, I mean, when
plus-
it goes, I'm fine with putting it to committee and having committee, examine all the issues that everybody has, but I think they should not be required to meet the requirements of a Class B liquor license because they're a brewery or a distillery.
Yeah, the
They
statute
should meet
says
the requirements of
license
that.
or permit.
licensed or permitted.
So they're permitted, so why wouldn't you evaluate it based on what has to be present when it's a distillery?
The issue here is that there's different owners of the restaurant. So why it doesn't come up in the future like that is because if a business leaves, like the restaurant and the liquor license is kind of under the same ownership, this one, the Super Day, could technically leave next month and there could be a different business coming forward.
Does a brewery in Ashwaubenon have to have a restaurant?
No, they're permitted through the state.
So that's what I'm saying. They're a brewery or a distillery. They're not a
So with
liquor
these,
store or
right,
whatever.
with these secondary locations, you're supposed to, it's recommended and with the statute, when they have this, to apply the same standards as you would a Class B liquor license.
Oh, that doesn't make sense.
You know,
to
the
me.
thing is, what people forget, a lot of people will reference the public market down in Milwaukee, which is a huge building.
Yeah.
And everybody's in there and everybody has alcohol walking throughout the whole thing. Milwaukee is a first-class city, so they have different liquor law rules that they have to follow that we don't get to follow. So that is one of the things why they can do it, and we have.
How did the cannery public market do that downtown Green Bay? Because they had a person that sold beer, they had a person that sold subs, they had a person that sold empanadas, they had a person that sold desserts, and they were all selling in the same hours in the same location.
It's not necessarily about state statute authorization. It's about the village board and how they typically grant these kind of licensed premises. So there's, for example, there's no standalone bars in the village.
Right.
You'll find them down in Green Bay.
I'm just saying,
So
like, small businesses are starting to do this because we have to financially.
Mhm.
So like, I don't know if you guys know, like De Pere, there's two businesses that just did this. So there's one business called The Porch. They own the bar and they do drinks and they do entertainment. So then another place, Caribbean Taste, completely separate people, completely separate owners, do the food in that same location. And they share it, they just opened it. There was a lovely article in the Green Bay Press Gazette, maybe 2 weeks ago. We have to do this. We have to survive. As, like, when we're talking small business, you guys know. I mean, a lot of you had small businesses. You know, you worry about it, you love it.
I think
We have to make it work.
everybody
Yeah,
up
and
here.
I'm just saying, from like a perspective, like, this is how the future is going with small businesses.
Right. I think everybody up here loves your concept,
Yeah.
loves the idea, but we can't break our ordinances to allow you to do it. That's the thing. So we have to talk with the DOR. And I think Jay's was getting ready to make a motion. So we need to talk to the DOR to make sure that we do it properly.
Can I ask a question? And Patrick, I kind of asked you this at the beginning, but, so let's say we approve it tonight. They go to DOR, that's their next step, is going to DOR, and they have to get approval there. Then it has to come back to us, correct, for us to set rules and regulations. So then I misunderstood you. So when we approve it tonight, we're approving that they can have the outside selling, that they can have everything they have. So we don't have any comeback for us to say, well, we really don't want you to be able to do this, this, or this by our ordinance. Is that correct then?
Correct.
So when if we approve it tonight, it's approved with everything they have in this memo?
Yeah, unless the board,
Hours, where they're gonna sell outside, all of that stuff is already approved then?
unless you feel that the application should be amended where we don't like for example, how much of the premise is authorized, or we don't like the outdoor premise permission, so something like that, yeah, or the changing of the hours or something, but, yeah, what's been applied for tonight is what would be approved unless the board felt otherwise.
So, if, whatever we submit on that application, we are endowed to follow. So when we say our hours are this hours, we're indemnified by the state to follow those hours. When we mark out on that chart, that is the location the alcohol is going to be. That is where it has to be. When we asked for the outside privileges, you'll see that they are very specific dates coordinated to the Packers schedule. And so we can't have parking lot parties whenever we want. They're for specific reasons on specific days. And then next year, and the reason we did that is because I know that you guys have the procedure of like 3 weeks or a month in advance, each location that has an outdoor. So we don't have to go back to the state every 2 weeks. We wanted to put the premise for those days up front, and then as soon as the NFL Packer schedule is written next year, we will have to reapply, go through the same process for the AB 105 to have our building permitted, to have our outdoor permitted, and so each year we'll actually need to come back and go for re-submission in order to get our outdoor opportunities. So a yes today isn't necessarily a yes forever, but a yes today on everything that's in that packet, what we have outlined, where we can sell alcohol in the unit that we're in, less Super Days bar, so alcohol can't be sold there, can't be stored there, can't be there. In addition to the days that we've marked, those are all hard, those are all hard enforced by the state. And as a manufacturer, we don't have the liberty to ask for forgiveness because they'll pull our permits, and if we can't manufacture alcohol, we don't have a business. And so, whatever is submitted on that form, we are subjected to. We are held to that standard. And so you know that these are going to be our hours. If we want to change, if we want to add hours, if we want to overlap, if we want to do anything, we do need to come back to you for permission. We can't just, it's not our place to do what we want, so we're ideally, in this situation, we tried to put ourselves in a box where it is everywhere but the Super Day bar. Everything is under lock and key. We only have 5 bottles to put away. Any outdoor opportunities are outlined before, on this application. So, and again, we have to resubmit this application next year in order to have any outdoor events. If we want to open an hour earlier, an hour later, all of those things, this is a fine-tuned, absolute on what we can and what we can't do. And I think, Mr. Legal had talked with our attorney, and was that kind of your understanding as well?
Like a kind of an annual renewal process?
Well,
the general understanding.
What we submit is, that is our limit. That is everything we can do. We can't do anything more. We can't do anything less.
Correct.
And it would just be for the outdoor events.
Well, even indoor, we can't adjust our hours.
Correct.
Right.
We can't move our premise. We can't do any of that without your approval. So we would need to come back and go through this whole process again. So this isn't a forever and we get to just run around like with kids with candy. So we understand the concerns. We submitted this application a month and a half ago and have submitted not only our personal time but our money into our attorneys to work with your team to make sure that we try to address as many of these issues and put ourselves into a clear, concrete box that you guys can see and have approval of, as well as continue to have approval in the future. Because again, if we want to change an hour, we have to come back. If we want to the Packer schedules changes next year, we need to have those days approved. If there's an event we want to have, let's say there's something cool that pops up, we would have to come back in here and say, hey, we want to do all of this, and this is all exactly the same except for July 17th. So these things they're written in stone, and we have to follow. So it isn't the free-for-all. It isn't as uncertain, and, we've certainly, spent, several $100s to have our attorneys have these conversations up front to try and make sure that we have as much of this ironed out for you guys as possible.
It just sounds like this is new, DOR since May, like you were saying, and it sounds like there's more rules coming down in regard to what you guys do. It's something new for us as well, and there's some concerns for us from ordinance-wise. So I think, Jay, I agree with his motion.
I think what I would like to do is to make a motion to table this and send it back to staff for further analysis. I don't think at this time it needs to go back to Public Works or anything. I would just like to see it go back to staff for further analysis and come back with recommendations from staff.
I'll second that.
If we could, we
Okay.
do have a floor that is open.
Yes, we have to
so if-
close the floor.
Closing that before taking action on the.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Okay, now, I just want you to know that if we table this, there will be no more discussion on it, okay?
Tonight,
And
right.
it- Right,
Right.
okay? Okay. Just
So I move that we table this, send it back to staff for further investigation, and to then bring it back to the village board.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table and bring back to village board after staff gets a little more
Before it's
information.
formally tabled, or is it, it's not considered yet because we didn't take a vote. Is there any input you would want from the village board on things that are concerns for us so staff can look into that? Or do you guys kind of have what you're thinking? Because one of my concerns is the parking lot being blocked off for all those events. We have parking issues up there here anyway, and all of a sudden their parking lot's totally not usable during the events when they're outside. But I don't know if that would be appropriate, but maybe getting some other feedback if anyone has any.
Just
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, the floor is closed. I can't.
So I don't know that the parking lot would be a condition of license approval or AB 105 approval, so I don't know that that would be a component of this discussion.
Okay.
If we're gonna do that, and the staff is gonna get together and bring up some, whatever, discussion points, whatever you wanna call it. Us individually as a board and the folks out here, are they gonna be involved at all in that process?
So I think what I would like to do, if this is an item that's tabled to staff and not to committee, is I'd like to have a conversation with the three individuals that are here tonight directly, because I know that you've been working directly with our staff here. But I want to get those reference points that you had provided to us during discussion as far as other entities that are doing something similar. I want to understand what provision under the statute they were allowed to do that, so we have a firm understanding of it. This is somewhat new to the state too, obviously, so they're kind of working through some of these provisions as well. So, to be honest with you, I want to understand these other operators, understand what provisions within the statutes they're operating under, what conditions can be placed as part of this kind of granting of permission, if you will, to the state, if any. And what abilities or authorities does the village have in its effort to grant or deny consent to the permit? So again, this is essentially, we're telling the state, yeah, we're okay with it, or no, we're not okay with it. The state ultimately makes the final decision. What we've been told is that if the village denies the request, the state will likely deny it as well. I don't know how truthful that is. Obviously, we haven't applied that yet, so I don't know how accurate that statement was by the individual from the DOR. So again, I don't know that it's necessarily the concept or the effort that's being applied. It's just a matter of, are we on firm footing that if we grant this license, it's an appropriate granting? It's not a license, excuse me. If we grant permission, is it an appropriate granting of permission? so that in the event that another applicant comes in, we're doing it correctly and not creating any unintended consequences by our actions on this particular
Right.
application.
And totally understand that.
Yeah.
But as you go through that process, are you gonna be in communication? So the next time they come before us, we're not hammering with other issues. So when they come to us, they can go, here's what the concerns were, and here's how we're gonna handle these concerns.
I think they were
Factoring
obviously-
in that everything else is,
Yeah, again, it's just a confirmation. I think when we reviewed it internally coming into this meeting, there may have been some conflicts internally too, and then we were not getting, I think, consistent messaging maybe from the DOR as to what this process is. So I think what we just want to do is confirm wholeheartedly that the provisions in 125 permit this type of kind of dual use under the same location, albeit somewhat separate premises, but with a singular premise entrance, a singular exit. Can they do that? Are there issues from that, in that realm?
And we
And then in the event that a different business operator comes into that premise, right now they may be okay. But if I will just continue to use the example, a dog groomer comes in, hypothetically again, what does that mean then? Does that mean that their permit is revoked then because it's in conflict with I don't know what that means.
Right.
Right now, it may be okay, and we'll hope that it will continue to be this arrangement and this partnership between Super Day and Timekeeper. But in the event that it doesn't, what does that mean?
Right.
And again, I know if Timekeeper makes no changes, but Super Day decides they're so successful now because Timekeeper, attracted some additional attention, and now they're going to expand and move to another location. What does that look like?
And Patrick, I'm sure will look at our ordinances to make sure that in granting the yes, that we're not violating anything that we have on, because this is such a new law at the state. So,
I think one of the things that we should definitely know is the state can't override us if it's denied. Because we've had situations where we had, I don't want to mention them, things under control. The state overruled us and let it become a state policy. And they overruled us. So that is a must there.
yep. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to table. Everybody understand? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Okay,
this isn't the end of this.
no.
In my heart, I totally support you guys as a former small business owner, and I know the way things are. I had ideas with my business. I couldn't, and it's the alcohol business. It was. And there were certain state laws that I wasn't able to do in my own building that I thought would have helped me out, but I was restricted. But now something's opened up for you guys, and I hope we can figure this out.
Thank you very much.
Alcohol is very restricted.
I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you. Okay, 10H, consider, discuss, act on approval of potential Bandshell concept in Klipstine Park. Rex.
Okay, once again, this agenda item, it's conceptual in nature. You're not approving a particular kind of bandshell. You're not approving anything like that. We have a private individual in the community. Many of you know him, Mr. Ken Bukowski, who was the fundraising chairman for our 3 major facility projects back in 2014, 2015. You may or may not know that as part of the original community center project, it was proposed that we put in a bandshell behind the community center as part of the overall project. That was eliminated just due to funding at that time, because we had to find a lot of efficiencies or savings with the cost of those facilities back in the day. The idea of having a bandshell in Klipstine Park has never fully gone away, though. It has been since at least 2014, been in our outdoor comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, i.e. the CORP plan. So it has been listed as a project. That opportunity just has never really come forward on how do we make this one happen. Ken has stepped forward and said that he'd like to continue to see that happen, and he has found donor funding already in the amount of $300,000. Now, I don't think that's going to cover fully the cost of this particular project, but what he's looking to be able to tell the donors is that the village of Ashwaubenon is behind this project. In other words, they're in approval of the project, not necessarily the funding of the project, but in general approving of the project. So he'd like that confirmation, I guess, before he goes and continues on with the fundraising efforts for this particular bandshell. What we're looking at right now is basically some type of bandshell. We're not really sure what kind, but it would basically be put where the current summer concert tent is right now for our Wednesday lunchtime concert series. In front of the bandshell, in some form or fashion, we'd also be putting up eventually, whether it be part of the project or later on down the line, some shade structures, since we're losing the majority of the trees within Klipstine Park. So I guess what we're looking for right now is just, I'm here to answer any questions you may have. It has been, the one caveat I should say regarding funding is Klipstine Park is still an open contaminated site by the DNR. So potentially the core samples that were taken back in 2014, 2015, when the community center was being built, had very slight contamination levels in the spot where the current concert slab is right now. So if we were to do any excavation, if we were to do any digging of footings for a shade structure, there may be the chance that we need to take that dirt off site and put it in a predetermined site that accepts that type of contamination. That may or may not be funded by the village, but from what we are being told by Rettler and Associates, we've been working with on some potential designs, that cost would be minimal. So moving forward, again, this is just the concept of the whole thing. It's not approving any funding going forward by the village. It's just, are you guys good with continuing efforts in the fundraising for potential bandshell moving on?
Ken has done an outstanding job in our village with all the fundraising he has done when we had our 3 community projects, the community center, the pool, the PAC, and he always does such a wonderful job for us. So I am in favor of him continuing to go forward.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the concept of the bandshell in Klipstine Park. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
10I, consider discuss 2025 budget and 5-year capital improvement plan. Greg Wenholz.
You want
So-
to start, Greg? There.
Yeah, I'll start a little bit, and Joel will kind of jump in as well. So back in July, I put out the timeline for the budget, and what we wanted to do with this meeting was just kind of touch base where we're at in the process, discuss some of the key takeaways that we're going into the budget season, and then also show you our first capital improvement plan draft. It's a new document this year we've been working on internally, and present that to you as well as kind of information and just kind of get you aware of what's going on through the budget process. So overall, we had a budget kickoff meeting last week with department heads, rolled out their operational budgeting platforms to prepare their budgets. They're due September 23rd is when they're due, and then from there we start having internal meetings to discuss those budgets, ultimately waiting on some more information from the state, final numbers from the state, working our way all the way up to the full budget review, which is on Tuesday, November 12th. From there, any modifications get made, and then ultimately adopting that budget and approving it through a resolution and having a public hearing on Tuesday, November 26th. So that's kind of the timeline that there's a lot going on in between there with preparation and meetings and discussions and more preparation and more meetings and more discussions. As far as the overall budget, we're looking at kind of what we call a zero-based approach, which means don't just turn in what you did last year. You need to look at your numbers, verify what you need. We've done a lot in the last couple of years. We've done a lot internally. We've added multiple positions throughout different departments, which have been great and much needed. We've addressed capital projects as we can. We're growing, and sometimes time is just the deterrent in doing more projects. There's just only so much we can do internally as a staff. So some of the key priorities don't really change year over year. We're focusing on maintaining our service levels, maintaining our staffing levels, and trying to find efficiencies in all of that. So, whether that's trying new technologies internally or it's new processes out on the streets, if you will, with different machinery, equipment, techniques with the public works, park and recreation, public safety. So those are always kind of those goals that we have here. Maintain our service levels. That's number one priority. Improve our service levels if we can, and then maintain our staffing. Targets such as tax rate, levy, things like that, we've had. It's just been a really interesting valuation process over the last few years, and it continued again. So we did a market reevaluation 2 years ago, got ourselves up to about a 1.1, 1.2 rate or assessment ratio, where we're matching our market to our assessment ratios. That's already dropped down to about 90.5 in 1 year. It's just the market out there, and I've talked to a number of other communities, and they're feeling the same thing. So that'll be a challenge for us to maintain our levy. So what that does, it just artificially, all things being equal, that drives up your tax rate, just when that assessment ratio drops. So all things being equal. We typically look at tax rate here. We look at tax rate, but the levy is really what drives our budget. Those are the actual dollars and cents that we receive to balance our budget. On top of that, if you're not aware, the personal property tax is gone, so that won't be a part of next year's budget. So the state did create a formula for that. We will get $381,000 additional dollars from the state. However, when I do my levy limit calculation, I have to remove $381 from last year's levy, and then they're just replacing it with a state aid payment. So we're not getting an additional $380,000 to work with. So that final preparation sheet comes out, they said September 1st, so I'll know if that's how that's all going to play out. So on top of that, you have your standard wage increases. We've got benefit adjustments such as WRS, which is slightly up from prior year. We have medical and dental insurance review that we need to do. We don't have anything final there. We're going through that process over the next month or two to finalize those rates. How that'll impact the budget, and you'll know through the capital plan. We got vehicle replacements we're looking at doing. So a lot of these are the same, but always a little bit different each year. Trying to move more and more towards building in all of our strategic objectives into the budget, and taking steps accordingly to make sure that what we're doing operationally lines up with those strategic goals. And I think we've been doing that over the years, but it's a continual process year over year. And then the last thing I noted here was drafting that 5-year capital plan, which we've done, and we'll show you that and talk through that. But it's very important to understand where our capital needs are. What are those priority projects that we need to focus on? What you're going to see is not necessarily final. These are, each of the department heads submitted their plans, and then we've had a brief discussion internally with each of those department heads to go over those and identify what's highest priorities and needs, and then obviously as we go through the budget process and identify the final valuations and numbers we have and where we want levy to fall, then those projects get fit in that way. So again, similar process, just seems to be every year different challenges, but we always seem to find a way to balance and maintain the service levels, improve those if we can, and that's really our goal. So Joel, if you want to touch base or add anything
Yeah, I'll just add a couple quick things. So Greg kind of covered a lot of the stuff that I wanted to identify, but I wanted to make the board aware of some of the directives that we've given staff at the kickoff meeting for the overall budget. Greg kind of mentioned some of the challenges in relation to the ratio differentiation between equalized and assessed value. As a result, that by itself will kind of artificially increase our tax rate. Knowing Ashwaubenon has been focused on tax rate because that's kind of the easier one to explain to our residents. That's a tough pill to swallow because you have to go to them without even doing anything. This is just nature of market condition and say our tax rate's going up even though your levy may have stayed flat, let's say. So we recognize that that's important has been important to the village. So as a result of that, what we really want to focus on is any levy increases to the general fund should be really kind of narrowed to what the rate or the increase is in net new construction. And when you do that, essentially your levy, even though it's increasing, it feels like it's staying flat to the average taxpayer that have been here before because that levy is essentially accounting for the new taxpayers that are in your community. So we're really focused on maintaining that net new construction. This may sound like a small figure, but it actually is a really good number. We had 3.8% net new construction last year. And so that resulted in about $130 million of additional new development. That is our highest number that we've had in 3 years. So that's a fantastic figure for Ashwaubenon, and we'll continue to see that. We're at this point, our new construction is nearing $200 million already just for 2024. So our percentage of net new construction is good. That will result in hundreds of thousands of dollars of new levy that will be in the community that we can use. And as Greg had mentioned, what we're focused on is maintaining existing status quo. So that includes maintaining competitive wages for our staff. We want to account for any increases in health insurance. And then that slight adjustment in WRS. All told, we anticipate we are able to accommodate any challenges as it relates to wages, health insurance, and other benefits to our employees with that net new construction. The other things that, other directives that we gave to staff were number one, that we were not going to anticipate or really take into consideration, strong consideration, any new positions with the village. If you recall last year, we had a number of new positions, we had a number of retirements, we had a lot of turnover and change. If you come into Village Hall, you see a lot of new faces. And so because of that substantial change in position count last year, we would like to maintain status quo for 2024. As you know, wages, benefits, that is our biggest budget driver for cost. So we want to make sure that we're cognizant of that. The other thing we want to take into consideration is the 2025 draft. We're still putting together our thoughts, our numbers, and what that's going to look like for the village's operations. We do anticipate that to be a significant cost. I know the question has come up, well, are we going to get reimbursed from the NFL, from the Packers, from the fundraising efforts locally? I heard there were maybe state dollars that were given from the legislature. And all of that is a very, very distinct maybe not. So we need to be prepared for that maybe not scenario. I tend to be a little bit pessimistic about any opportunities for reimbursement, so I'm going to plan for the maybe not. And that will be substantial to the village. So we want to make sure we're aware of that. So we are proposing what I call, or I coin, a modified zero-based budget. So everybody needs to think innovatively and efficiency in preparing their budget, recognizing that only changes that are going to be coming in, especially on the general fund side, are going to be derived from those standard cost of living increase type things for wages, benefits. Operating expenditures should strive to achieve that zero-based approach. We also recognize that there may be things, especially on the enterprise account side, utilities in particular. You heard the presentation tonight from New Water. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're going to hear a similar presentation next week or next month with Green Bay Water. If you've been paying attention to the news, they're increasing their rates substantially, and that gets passed on to us as a wholesale customer. So they will come. We're having obviously some challenges with stormwater and some of the mandates that are coming from that, and some deferred maintenance that has occurred over the years. So that'll come before you in October. Some of those things that we are not within our control, like rate increases from New Water or GB Water, there will be a tough decision that the board will have to make as to whether or not we're going to try to absorb those costs or pass them on to the consumer. The short story is it will be very difficult for us to stay solvent if we absorb those costs. So recognizing that those are happening. So the modifications that people, department heads are being encouraged to do is look for new revenue sources. So if there's an opportunity to generate additional fees or be creative with fees and other sources of revenues, they should entertain those. So if they're looking to expand a service or provide or maintain a particular service level and they can find a new revenue to support that, we would encourage them to do so. Those items would be identified in the budget, that this is being supported by a new revenue source so you can see it. So that if it's a fee or some type of charge, that's a decision that the board will want to make as to whether or not that's an agreeable source. The other aspect of it is cost recovery. So again, that's just finding innovative, efficient ways to conduct our current business. So really scrutinizing your budget this year to make sure that we are doing it the most efficient way possible. And then finally, any service adjustments. So maybe there are opportunities to reduce or modify a service that does have a direct impact on residents and constituents, and that's okay. Include those if we think that we can do those relatively well with little kickback. And again, all three of those modifications, whether it's revenue, cost recovery, or service adjustments, those should be identified in budget narratives. So when we come back to you either in October or November, those are clearly identified, and then you can discern whether or not those are of value to you and you want to make those changes. So that is where we're at to date. I don't think anything is necessarily doom and gloom, but I do think that if we intend to be financially prudent, especially for 2025, given some of the challenges in the changes of equalized value versus assessed value, the NFL draft, the things that we're seeing at the enterprise fund level with rate increases in sewer and water, those are real costs to your constituents. I think we need to take a step back from kind of this growth mentality that we've had the last few years and really kind of strive for looking for efficiencies and innovation. So that's kind of the directive we've given staff. I trust that the board is in agreement with that. I don't know that I would suspect any elected member says let's spend more. So let's find efficient ways to do more with less.
You know, there's one comment I'd like to make on that, Joel, regarding the draft coming up. I think anything that's spent, and I got to go along with you, I know a lot of people say, oh, we're going to get refunded for whatever, but I think anything that is spent will enhance the village itself. I already see things that the street department is already doing to make it look prettier. So,
Rex's staff and Brian's staff,
you're making
tree
it,
trimming and pruning.
It's showing now, but I think anything that is done for the draft for the village is only going to enhance us for the years to come. So whatever money's spent there, I think it's well spent for the village.
Okay, so there's no,
Devil is in the detail, Joe.
yeah.
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah, our, like Joel said, our street department, our park and rec people, our forestry people, they've been busy. They've been identifying areas and how do we make things look good? Because everybody who went to Detroit said there was a real clear, conscious effort in Detroit to make that city look good. So we got to do a little bit better.
I just have a question on the capital plan.
I think we're
5-year.
starting ahead of them.
It looks great. Is this the first year that you guys have really put this together? Is that correct?
I
Like
think
this
a formal
intense?
document like this, yes.
Yeah.
We've had spreadsheets in the
Yeah.
past and try and update them, but to present kind of a formal book. And then the plan will be to enhance this a little bit more leading into next year's budget. So we'll do a review process January, February, and then it'll be kind of the first step for department heads to update this. This year was about transitioning to this new software, learning the software, getting things up to speed in here. So, yeah, that'll be the plan long term. And then once it's kind of a living, breathing document that's just constantly modified and changed as things come up. So this will be a great tool to use in leading into the budget season itself. So, but it's more there also to give the board awareness of what's out there, and what are the things that we're looking at and doing, and quite frankly, seeing the cost of those things and how we anticipate, spending our money or finding funding sources for those.
So next year, Greg, you're gonna click on the button that says manpower plan, and you're gonna turn that one on? Because there's gotta be one in there, well, because this is all capital, that's great, but to Joel's point, it's always the manpower and those costs that always really drive your budget.
Right.
So I'm assuming there's something in there to do that as well, to be planning.
Well, that's just a big spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your spreadsheet right now, I got that, but I'm hoping it's in
My
that
job
software as
security.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think out of the two, so wages and benefits are clearly the most largest
driver.
component of the operating budget. As it relates to overall levy dollars, though, your capital infrastructure replacement and repair is next in line. So these are definitely things that are a little bit more fluid too, because you can move things year over year. Now, you'd hate to defer things for extended period of time, and that's the purpose of having the CIP, is then you can kind of see your impacts over time, what that deferment looks like. Yeah, so in your packet, you have kind of the summary sheets. We gave you year one of what the capital project detail sheets look like. There are detail sheets for every project year over year for even up to the 10 years. I know some department heads put stuff in there all the way through 10 years.
Down in the bottom of this too, so
Right.
I was looking at them.
But I know Tracy had a question, so I'd be happy to answer it.
I just have a couple from some of the projects that came for the 5-year capital improvement plan from the Bike Ped Committee. I noticed they're all in here, but some of them are shifted years or are listed different. Is that just something I can get to you guys, or how is that going to work into that? Or to get back to Bike Ped, because the one that shifted is that Hanson Road sidewalk extension, and that's been Leroy's thing for years, and that got pushed back to 2027. So that was just my question, and then another one got pushed up to 2026. That was different from what Bike Ped had recommended. So I don't know how you want to handle that, or if you...
So I think what we can do is that can come before, so this is obviously just an introductory
Yep.
conversation. This
Yep.
can come back to village board as part of the budget process. So if projects want to move up, move down, we can have this item at the meeting again in September, so we can get into more detail on the individual projects. We knew for you seeing this the very first time,
Yeah,
this would
it's a
be a
lot.
little overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So give it to you now, you can chew on it a little bit, and we can bring it back and have further
Okay.
conversations. Some of that could be just simply, we're trying to match kind of the overall levy dollars that we had for capital projects last year to manage that kind of zero-based approach that we're challenged with. So things got moved around for that purpose primarily. But if there's a priority that the board has where they want to see something move forward and maybe something move back, then that's the whole point and purpose of the CIP, is to allow you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I know all the department heads did a really good job on tracking all this stuff, so thank you very much, department heads. Okay, so 10J, consider, discuss, act on a request to pre-authorize the purchase of vehicles for public safety. Chief.
Yep, and following with our capital improvement plan, we are looking to get pre-authorization to order. The windows obviously are tight for ordering police vehicles. We also have a transit van that we want to use for the crime scene equipment. We have a van now that's pretty old and is not very feasible, so we'd like to update that, as well as the CSO vehicle that is a 2017 Chevy truck that's starting to fall apart. So those are our requests. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have on those.
I move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the request to pre-authorize the purchase of vehicles for public safety. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
You know,
Thank-
the only thing that I gotta say on that, the only thing I miss in that van is Steve Cox.
Here, you've always got something. Thank you.
10K, consider, discuss, act on the reallocation of water utility funds for the design of a monotower in place of a Babcock standpipe.
All right, so this is definitely not a new item. You may recall this item, it came before Village Board back in June. We were asked by Village Board to kind of explore other options to see the feasibility and understand the existing terms that we have with the current cell providers. So with that being said, we have an existing standpipe that's located on Babcock Road. The structural stability of that standpipe is beyond the end of its usable life. There is a lot of cell equipment on that tower. The cellular equipment is from Verizon, US Cellular, and T-Mobile. We do have current agreements with those cell phone providers. Some of those cell phone, Verizon, for example, we do have agreement with them until 2035, US Cellular's 2045, T-Mobile's 2057. So we've committed to those cell providers that we would provide them some sort of device, elevated structure to have their equipment on. Seeing as though the standpipe is getting to the end of its useful life, we explored other options as to what we can do in order to make sure that we're still able to fulfill our commitment. With that, there's revenue that's obviously generated. Revenue currently right now is right around $82,000 annually. With that being said, over 5 years, between all three vendors that are up there, you're looking at $460,000 over the course of the next 5 years. So with that being said, we sat down with administration, kind of discussed what are the different options. So we do have the option of course, repairing the existing standpipe. The challenging thing is the way the construction of that standpipe is, the steel that it is sheeted with is a ½ inch thick. So it's very thick steel. There is areas that it literally has basketball-sized holes that are completely rusted through the ½ inch thick steel. So with that being said, to not only repair those holes and then sandblast the existing structure and paint it, to get that structure back up in a good stable condition, you're looking between $600,000 and $700,000. With that, I do not recommend that option. We didn't feel as though that was a good option. The second option is to terminate the leases. We can remove the standpipe and then we could sell the lot for a single family home. Of course, this will result in a loss of that $84,000 to $110,000 revenue over the course of the next 30 years. Estimated cost to remove the standpipe is about $60,000, assuming that scrap steel prices stay the way they are. We would also need to run sewer and water laterals to that lot. The lot likely could resell for about $75,000 or a little bit less because it is a corner lot. We do not recommend that option at this time. The third option is to remove the existing standpipe, install a monotower, allow those cell phone providers, 3 cell phone providers, to relocate to that monotower. The construction is estimated about $245,000 for the cost of that monotower. We'd still be able to continue with our leases and generate that $84,000 to $110,000 per year. Our return on investment would likely take approximately 3 years, but after that, we would be making profit. And then the last option is to just remove the existing standpipe and negotiate a long-term lease with a cellular or with a tower providing company. That would be probably a lump sum payout, but ultimately you wouldn't have that revenue annually that we currently bring in. With that being said, we did see a cost savings in our tower inspections. We had allocated some funding towards our inspections for our towers and reservoirs that we did this year. There was a $64,000 savings. Looking to reallocate those funds, $43,900, to begin engineering for the construction of a monotower. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions. I know it's a lot of information.
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for all their work that they did. I mean, Patrick looking at the leases, Brian looking at the costs, Joel was looking at the leases, and having the meetings to gather all this information to find out what really would be the recommended thing to move forward. So,
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thank you for your work on that to get that information. One question I have is, I don't know what the monotower looks like, but is there any possibility that that could be put in, but you could still have a single family home on that lot, or is that like there's no way in heck?
So the challenge is, the Monotower, yes, but the challenge is there's a lot of, we'll say auxiliary structures. So there's, you know, they're kind of like a one-stall garage. And each provider does have that device there, and it's essentially for their, you know, networking. Some of them have a backup generator in that room. So between their auxiliary structures, we'll say, in the tower, no, unfortunately, there's none.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll move to reallocate 43,900 in funding from tower and reservoir inspection to the design of the Monotower at the Babcock Standpipe site.
Does anybody-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reallocate the water utility funds for a Monotower in place of Babcock Standpipe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 11, items for next agenda. I'm sure we'll have the Timekeeper Distillery. If there's anything else that somebody would like on the agenda, just give a jingle to the office. Number 12, closed session items. During the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to A and B as listed in the agenda. I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Roll call vote, please.
Brian.
Getting there. Sorry. Trustee Service.
Yes.
Trustee Paul.
Yes.
Trustee Zerbal.
Yes.
President Kardasky.
Yes.
Trustee Atkinson's gone. Trustee Krieger.
Yes.
Trustee Flukie.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, we're going into closed session. Thank you, everybody.
This conference is no longer being recorded.